Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier. I'm happy to be here with you today, and this is March 20th of 2022, and it is 2:30 in Eastern Standard Time. I am happy to be here with you. We are on Facebook, Twitter, DLive, reaching out to you. I'd like to say Facebook, but the internet overlords at Facebook, at YouTube, have shut us down for an entire week. That is a big deal. And why did they shut us down for a week? Because we quoted the major mainstream news media and asked you to think about what they were saying. That's all it takes, is for you to think about what is happening. But we're going to go on. Well, we're going to talk about that in a moment. We're going to be talking about the other things that are affecting all of our lives, and we are happy to hear from you from anywhere in the world. To reach out to us, you can call into the show at 607-242-1582. You can also reach us in your chats and tweets and texts, and we will be happy to see that. You'll be able to see that onto the program as soon as they come in. We'll have that up live for you. So and we're also, by the way, on our Discord, and we are live on there at this moment as well. So there's been a lot that's been happening this week. It has been a very difficult week, confusing week, to say the very least, looking at what's been happening around the world and the impact. And the big thing that we want you to think about is, what are the consequences that we are going to see for what is happening today? Very often we are listening to the major news media and they're trying to disconnect what's happening today with anything else. Like with the New York Times, they want you to disconnect what happened in October 2020 and how that is affecting the world today. Of course, we're talking about the Hunter Biden laptop that the New York Times now decides that, oh, this was real, this was true. You didn't need to know about it in 2020, but now we can tell you about it after it's too late in 2022, because they think you don't remember, because they think that this is a surprise to you, that they're doing their job. They're not. What they did is propaganda. What they did is electioneering, in my opinion, in trying to make sure that they could get the outcome that they wanted, regardless of what you actually need to know so that you can make the proper decisions for yourself. And when we have that kind of environment where the news media is doing what it wants to advance its political agenda, well, then you suffer, because it's that same mentality that allowed us to see no foreign policy initiatives, no mission from the Biden-Harris administration, and that caused us to be in Afghanistan and take a loss, a devastating loss, abandoning thousands of Americans in Afghanistan on purpose, and to ignore those individuals, ignore these American citizens for months now, for 6-7 months now, so much so that even saying the word Afghanistan is a dirty word. The news media will not cover this anymore. And now we see that leads to the Ukraine and Russia and how that conflict has been coming together. And we'll talk a little more about that in just a moment. But that's not the only thing. Let me take a step back and let me mention, if this is the first time that you are seeing our channel, we want to welcome you and we thank you for being part of our audience, even as we are being subjected to censorship and shadow banning. We really appreciate your voices and hearing from you and having your viewership, even if you don't agree with what we have to say. Because it's not about agreement. It's not about blindly following us. It's about having thought and discussion about the issues that are affecting us all. And for those who have been with us, obviously you may recall we've been talking a lot about a very important issue. You've heard about the bird flu, and we've been talking about that for a while now. I think about 9 months now. We've been warning you that there is a bird flu, or an avian flu, or the H5N1 flu that has been growing throughout the world. We know that this is transmissible to human beings. That was found out in 2021, where the first case of the avian flu was transferred to a human being that came out of Russia. And now we see that this avian flu has now infected 15 states in the United States. This is a big deal because a lot of people now have chickens in their homes. They've been trying to prepare for the higher food prices, the many difficulties of food shortages that we're hearing are going to be coming later in this year. And people have been getting chickens and growing their own crops. And so this avian flu affects you because it has affected New York State. It's affected North Carolina. It's in Wisconsin, as we see now. This is growing and it's affecting many people. So I want you to be aware of that, especially if you or your neighbors have chickens, you're getting eggs, or you're using that for additional meat because the prices are skyrocketing. Well, not a problem. Be aware there is a bird flu, and potentially there has been at least one case of the bird flu transferring to human beings. Please be very careful. Please be very aware and make whatever precautions you can to take care of that. I think it's a big deal. And we've been following this issue, and pretty much one of the only ones consistently following this in the news media for the last 6 months. That's kind of scary. You would think that with all the hundreds of employees, the tens of thousands, if not tens of millions of dollars of the major news media, they'd be more on top of this story and more consistent about it, but they're not. I also wanted to mention something about Taiwan, China and Taiwan, because obviously there is a lot going on in the world in terms of foreign policies. We're seeing Iran and the Iran nuclear deal is coming forward. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. We're also seeing that, of course, Ukraine and Russia, there is that conflict. It's still going on, and it is not ending anytime soon. Even though that there are talks to talk about a ceasefire, I want people to remember, these things don't end quickly. This is a major thing. This has been going on since 2014. Yes, this is a higher peak and a bigger invasion of the Ukraine, but it didn't start just in January of 2022. This has been going on since 2014, when the Obama administration and much of the world worked together to allow Russia to step in and take over the Crimea and annex that part of the nation. The first steps in being able to see what we see today. Now, when I was looking at that, and obviously the impact of this, we've seen that Joe Biden has been talking to many world leaders, and in particular, Vladimir Putin as well as others. And his international diplomacy has failed, partially because he sticks his foot in his mouth more often than not, where he actually is counting the United States message, whether it's by Secretary of State Antony Blinken, or God forbid, it's Kamala Harris. But we've heard him say over and over again on national news media that he expects Russia to win, that he suggested the appeasement of Russia by giving it the eastern region of the Ukraine, the Donbass region, that he has had such ill planning, even though he's told us he knew this was coming. He warned America. He says, I know this is going to happen. And yet now we see he doesn't have any plans in place. If you knew for 3 months that Russia was going to invade the Ukraine, why is it we don't have a plan in place already for the Ukrainian refugees? Why is it we're just now starting to send over the anti-tank and anti-air firearms that is needed in that nation? Why are we playing catch-up? Why is it that we're only now starting to put in sanctions that actually affect the Russian government that may have impeded them from going forward if we did that from the start? If we said that we would take on their oil, if we said that we would take them out of SWIFT, the international banking system, these are things that would have a major deterrent to the Soviet Union if they believed, to Russia, if they believed that we were serious. And if we started with that, well, maybe they wouldn't have taken the steps they did take. But Joe Biden hasn't just been talking to Vladimir Putin. He hasn't just been talking to the European Union. In fact, he's also talking to China. And this is important because China has continued to work with Russia. They have not denounced Russia. They have not ceased their trading with Russia. And in fact, they have been someone who has been, if reluctant, but definitely supportive of the actions of Vladimir Putin in retaking the Ukraine. And so we see that Joe Biden is trying to get China on his side. And he failed. And he failed. And that's a big thing. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But how did Taiwan react to that? How is Taiwan, which is watching this conflict, having seen that America has abandoned its own citizens in Afghanistan, that the United States under the Biden-Harris administration ran away, that its policy has been to give up, and then in Ukraine to see that, again, the Biden-Harris administration said that they would abandon American citizens. It's led to the death of an American citizen, a civilian, and possibly will lead to more deaths. How are the Taiwanese looking at this? Well, we have an answer to that. You see, this is coming out of Deutsche Welle, the German news media. And Deutsche Welle interviewed one of the military analysts out of Taiwan, and he was talking about how is Taiwan preparing with the United States. In fact, let me play this for you.
I'd just like to talk about the United States here. I mean, the United States is the biggest arms supplier for Taiwan and is also bound to Taiwan by the Taiwan Relations Act. How do Taiwanese military planners factor in the United States in any potential invasion scenario?
Thank you. Well, currently, Taiwan has its own plan to actually conduct its own defense without having a support from the U.S. It is, of course, welcomed, and in the grand scheme of things, a U.S. support eventually be required. And this brings us to another very important aspect of the lessons learned from Ukraine, which is coalition planning.
Right.
As we can see from Ukraine, the importance of ISTAR support, intelligence, surveillance, targeting, and reconnaissance support is of paramount importance. And this is something your allies and coalitions could provide to you without actually sending troops and actually firing weapons on the enemy for you.
Briefly.
Okay, so, and they go on to another question, but I think this is really important. And I don't think most people have noticed what's important about this statement. Essentially, Taiwan is looking at this, if I'm understanding it correctly, and they're trying to appeal to the Biden-Harris administration to tell them, you don't have to fight, you just have to support us. And they're trying to convince China that we don't need world powers to step in. They just need to support us with military aid. They need to support us with keeping a blockade from happening around the island nation. That, even though we've seen that the United States, the European Union, has been reluctant to actually take a stance, that their lack of posture, their lack of action is still supporting them. So I think this has a couple of levels. There's Taiwan saying to the American people, you don't have to worry about American soldiers having to go to Taiwan and fight. That's okay. You don't have to do that. Because we've seen that under the Biden-Harris administration, they're willing to take American soldiers out of Afghanistan and just run away, to just abandon, to leave billions of dollars of guns and tanks and weapons and helicopters, and leave that and create the first armed army of a international terrorist organization. The Taliban is now a legitimate army because of the weapons that the Biden administration left behind. And whether you like Joe Biden or not, that is a fact. It is a reality of the world that we must deal with. And Taiwan must deal with that and realize, okay, the Biden administration is unwilling to put in troops anywhere, regardless of what agreements may exist beforehand. And he's even gone further to say he will not go and rescue any American citizens. Taiwan saw this. So the answer to Taiwan is they have to appeal to Joe Biden and say, you don't have to put in troops. Please protect us. Please stand by the agreements that we have existing now. Please confirm that you will provide us with the weapons that we need to be able to defend our own nation. That's one of the appeals that Taiwan is making right now, and that's going directly to the Biden-Harris administration and to Democrats in the United States Congress, for them to stand up and stand by the agreements they have made and say, don't send troops, it's okay, but still stand with us. Don't abandon us like you abandoned Afghanistan, like you are abandoning people, American citizens in the Ukraine. That's what I believe is one of the messages that is coming through. Another message that I think is coming through is going to China and telling China it doesn't matter if you see American troops actually landing in Taiwan to defend the land of Taiwan, they're still supporting us. Just because Americans aren't actually taking an active defense, they're not involved directly with troops, doesn't mean America isn't willing to support us to the fullest extent, with that threat going on to mean nuclear as well. This is meant as a deterrence. It is meant to hold back the Chinese Communist government and to make them have a pause that China is not pausing, which is why China has insulted Joe Biden. They have rebuked Joe Biden in the most recent of conversations, which we are going to be discussing. Matter of fact, I have it here. Where did I have that? You know, I have so many stories here I want to cover with you guys. And I'm going to bring that up for you in just one second. So we know, there it is. I knew I had the story here. Come on. Waiting for the system to catch up. There it is. CNBC. Come on, CNBC. There we go. I believe this is the article. Nope. This is Russia. There it is. You know, computers some days, they run slow. They run a little bit behind the speed I would like them to, so that I can keep up with this and be able to tell you everything that's going on. But President Xi has been very clear. Here it is. And this is coming from the Times of India. China snubs the U.S., says, quote, he who tied bell to the tiger must take it off. And the exact quote coming again from the Times of India, he who tied the bell to the tiger must take it off. It takes two hands to clap. With these simple dictums, Chinese President Xi Jinping, on Friday rejected U.S. President Joe Biden's efforts to pressure Beijing into abandoning Russia on Ukraine issue while implicitly blaming Washington and its NATO allies for the crisis. This was a massive rebuke by the Chinese. They wrote a 1,030-word response, and that's compared to the comment from the United States about the conversation between Joe Biden and Chinese Communist President Xi Jinping, where he says 165 words. America is trying to hide this. The Biden administration is trying to downplay the fact that they just got slapped in the face internationally by the Chinese government. That the Chinese government said, it's your problem. You helped escalate this. You have to deal with it yourself. And that's a big deal. The Biden administration, and looking at it from another point of view, this is coming from Politico, okay? Biden's call with Xi underscores deepening bilateral deadlock. This is a big deal. This was on March 18th. And they say, quote, Biden's outreach failed to prod Xi to commit to leveraging Chinese influence and end Russia's aggression in Ukraine, or even to use the term invasion. The call instead provoked Xi's implicit criticism of alleged U.S. role in fomenting the crisis, perceived U.S. meddling in Taiwan, and bitterness towards threatened U.S. sanctions against China if it aids Russia's war effort. So, in fact, Joe Biden made the situation worse. He actually and actively made the situation, the consequences of the Russia-Ukraine war more difficult for the United States and has created more tensions in Southeast Asia than we had before. And this is taking into account the fact that there have been 9 hypersonic missiles that have been fired by North Korea at our allies in Japan and in South Korea, and that China has been making direct statements that they want to take over Taiwan sooner than later, that this is coming very, very soon. And so in this conversation, we saw China rebuke the United States, say that you have no standing here. This is an embarrassment. It would be one thing if China said, well, we're going to be neutral in this matter. They actually didn't say, we're going to be neutral, we're going to have our hands off, we're not involved. They said, America's the problem, that Joe Biden has been the problem, that Joe Biden has enabled this to happen, and that they blame the United States for everything that is a result and a consequence of this. And if America does the same thing with Taiwan, China's going to react violently. That's what they're saying. That's what that means. And think about this. We've been saying it's not World War III. It's 3 regional wars. And this is why we're saying this. Because China doesn't have the same ideology as Russia and Vladimir Putin. The Chinese Communist Party isn't the same as Russia and the Commonwealth of Independent States, nor is China aligned with the same ideology of North Korea or Iran. But each of these regions have very distinct reasons why they believe the Biden-Harris administration is weak and that they can make aggressive moves in their regions to take more territory and to change the face of the world geopolitically. What? Did they freeze my channel again? Did they freeze my channel again? There we go. All right. So this is changing the geopolitical face of the world at this moment, and it's a big deal. So I'm very concerned about this. When I see that every time that Kamala Harris goes to any region of the world and she speaks, the situation gets worse and America is embarrassed. Every time that we're hearing that Joe Biden is reaching out to these people that he boasted in 2019 and 2020, that he has these relationships with these foreign nations, and therefore he would be able to better negotiate for the United States and to create more global stability. And every single case that we have seen since February of 2021, that hasn't been true. In fact, the exact opposite has been true. The more that Joe Biden speaks, the worse the situation has become, and it is almost exponentially worse when we let Kamala Harris speak. And that is, if you don't believe it, again, look at what China has just said. Look at how they are reacting. Look at how Vladimir Putin has been reacting. Joe Biden's been talking about the potential and then the actual invasion of Russia into the Ukraine since December. And nothing he said gave any pause to Vladimir Putin. And now he's aggravating China and endangering Taiwan to the point that Taiwan is saying, don't worry, look, just give us weapons, just promise to give us weapons and stand by us, because they have no confidence that he would actually do anything more. Hell, they don't have confidence he's even willing to do that. Now, maybe you'd say, Mike, you're misunderstanding this. You're just misunderstanding what you're reading in the Times of India. You're misreading and misunderstanding what's being said in Politico. You're misreading the tea leaves that we are seeing be laid out before us internationally? I don't think I am. And again, we look at article after article, issue after issue. I'll give you another example. Here, and this is from Politico Europe. The EU has very reliable evidence China is considering military support for Russia. And in that article, they say, quote, "We are concerned about the fact that China is flirting with the Russians. The EU will impose trade barriers against China should Beijing proceed with Russia's request, as this is the only language Beijing understands." How is that any different than the stance that Joe Biden took against Russia for 3 months before we saw Russia invade the Ukraine? And those kinds of statements only made it worse. In fact, it made it worse for the entire world. You see, in doing things the way that we have seen the Biden administration do, and for the European Union to follow in that same footstep, to take those same kind of steps, that only makes things worse for the world, because the initial challenge isn't enough to stop these nations from doing what they want to do. And the follow-up reaction, because they're trying to catch up to what is actually happening on the ground, is more damaging to the European Union and the United States than it is to everyone else. In doing the sanctions the way they have done them, it's not that we've seen gas prices, crude oil and gas skyrocket. And then, yes, it did retreat a bit, but it's still higher than it has been. That's not the worst part of it, because the United States only gets about 4% of its oil from Russia. So it's not enough to dramatically cause a spike in gasoline that we've seen in the United States and crude oil in the United States. The problem is everyone else in the world is paying to get that oil, especially Europe, Germany. They rely on the Russian oil and gas. They are desperate for that, as is China. And so that's the fact that they're no longer going to be having that gas is what's driving those costs higher. And it affects Americans because globally, the cost of crude oil goes up. And therefore, electricity and energy in the United States has gone up. Because the Biden administration, not only did they cause this problem, energy has already been an issue in the United States since February of 2021, as we showed you last week on this program. That prices have been steadily increasing, and that's why in January, the year of 2021, we had a 40% increase in the cost of electricity. It's why we had, in just the month of January, we had an increase of approximately, I believe it was 42% in gas in the United States before there was a Russia-Ukraine war. I'm hoping this is making sense for everybody. I hope it's clear and you're able to see this. And again, I don't know that you are, because I believe we're being blockaded right now by Facebook, by YouTube, by Twitter. And so I'm not sure that people are able to see what we're talking about. And I hope this is coming across clear, that the failure of having an actual foreign policy, a defined goal, a defined plan, is allowing for just a Wild West kind of attitude around the world. It's leading to global destabilization because there is no leadership that's coming forward, and the few attempts that we are seeing at leadership are failing because they are not taking into account the consequences of the statements that are being made and the weakness that is on display. When the United States is not willing to protect its own people, to abandon its own people in multiple countries, that tells everyone in the world the United States is weak, that the United States is not willing to do anything. Because if they will not if the United States will not stand by its own people, if it will not protect its own people, then what makes you think we're going to protect anyone else, our allies, or to go against our enemies? Now, if you disagree with me, I'm perfectly happy to hear that. You can call in to 607-242-1582, and I'll be happy to hear why you would think I'm wrong about this. Or you can leave us a chat and YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, well, not YouTube at the moment, and tell us why. And I'm not sure that, and I hope that you are able to leave those messages. At the moment, I'm getting a message on my side that you guys can't see anything, that we've been blocked by all the news media, all the social media out there. And that's kind of sad, because we're asking you to think about the issues, not just to read the headlines and go, oh, well, Russia bad. That's the end of the story. There's more to it than that. And that everything that's gone wrong in America, well, that's just Russia's fault. That's not accurate at all. That's not even close to accurate in any way. You have to think. And we cannot just listen blindly to our leaders or our elected officials, I should say, and our news media that's been willing to lie to our face for a political agenda. We need to do more. We need to be more actively thinking about and considering what we are being told and why it doesn't make sense. And we have to hold our elected officials, Republican and Democrat and progressive and conservative, we have to hold them all accountable. Oh, thank you, Jason. Excuse me, folks. Thank you Jason for letting me know that I am on DLive at least. Again, the message I'm getting from the various sites isn't giving me any information. But we have to ask questions. And that's the worst thing. That's the punishment that's going on. Because behind the scenes, while we're seeing everyone focused on Russia, Ukraine, and a smaller group of us are worried about what's happening with Taiwan and China, and an even smaller group are worried about okay, thank you, Dow. Thank you, Dow, for letting me know about that. Even while there's so few of us who are looking at these threads, the Iran nuclear deal and what that's going to mean to global terrorism in the world, how it's going to negatively impact Israel, the United States, and Europe, even as we're looking at these, we have to be concerned right now, because in the background, the social media giants and the news media companies are conspiring to silence your voice. Now, I want to be very clear when I say that. Let me show you my evidence of that. And this is from our Minds account, where you can see the channel. We're on Minds, on Rumble, on Odyssey. We're on Discourse as well. So we're out on almost all the major media. And we noted that in the month of March alone, this is March 18th, March 20th, in this month alone, we have been attacked by Disney. We have been attacked by Showtime. And in both of those cases, we were getting content strikes that had no relevance whatsoever, as we have proven previously on this program, as we have shown you videos of the actual content that was in question. They failed. And then immediately afterwards, the very next week, what do we get? A content strike from YouTube 5 days after our last live stream. Last week we were on live. 5 days later, we get a strike from YouTube on our content for quoting CBS and Forbes. They are in the middle of a purge. No one is paying attention to the small content creators. Channels like this one, local news media activists that are out there who are trying to let you know about what's happening in the local elections in your neighborhood, what's happening at the state level in laws in your state, that are standing up to the CRT application movement in our schools and our school boards, people who are trying to fight and defend your rights to the Second Amendment, individuals who are trying to stand up and fight for your right to freedom. And because people are doing that, And that is something that is expressly not allowed by the social media internet giants. They're taking the opportunity, with everyone being distracted, to go out and to try and remove everyone they can. I strongly believe that the reason we got attacked on Facebook by Disney and Showtime wasn't because they were trying to say we had used their content illegally, which is false, not only because of fair use, not because of the transformative nature of what we do, but the content didn't even exist in the videos they were claiming. No. It was more importantly about silencing my voice, and more importantly, silencing your voice, silencing you from being able to speak. At the end of the day, this isn't about me. This isn't about this channel. We are a small news media channel. We understand that. But we speak to you every week, every Sunday around the world, and we are growing. More people are paying attention. We're having more and more important people come onto this program, like Nobel laureate Dr. Art Laffer, like we're about to have Matt Brainerd, who's going to be on Monday. We're going to be doing an interview with him. We're speaking to candidates for the New York 22, the New York 19, candidates that are running for races in your local communities. And people are paying attention to it. And they are terrified of that. They are terrified. Dow mentions that, did we get hit on Facebook? Did we get shut down on Facebook? They attempted to. And again, let me show you guys, and we have documented this earlier this week, but on March 6th, Disney tried to shut us down through Facebook. Showtime on March 8th tried to shut us down on Facebook. Both of those claims failed. The content wasn't being used, and we have fair use on top of that. They could not shut us down there, even though they tried. They used the rules, they perverted the rules to try and punish us for speaking to you, because in each of those cases, they were targeting this weekly Sunday live stream. And in each and every one of those cases, they failed. And then immediately afterwards, at the very next live stream available, YouTube steps in. Not the same day, not a few days later, 5 days later, which makes us believe that there were individuals, whether they be censors or progressives, I don't know, that saw the content, saw that we were gaining in our subscribers, gaining people who are paying attention and looking into the program, and they decided we have to stop this, and this is the perfect time. Let's purge these small voices before they become bigger voices. More importantly, they don't want you to think about it, because you're not supposed to listen to the news and consume it and then have a question. I will give you an example of something that you might want to question. Now, again, you don't have to agree with the content of this channel. You don't have to agree with my conclusions based on the evidence that we provide to you. We have never asked you to do that. We have never asked you to become a Republican or a conservative or a libertarian, or for that matter, a Democrat or a progressive. We have never told you to do anything other than to make up your own mind, and that these are the conclusions that we have come through. And that's because we believe in your freedom of thought, that you as an individual are able to take the information and make your own decisions. The internet giants, they don't want you to do that. Progressive ideology doesn't want you to do that. To them, you are a checkbox, and you are only meant to do what is approved for your checkbox group, whether that be based on the color of your skin, your sex, your sexual preference, your political ideology. You're only supposed to do what you are approved, and you're not supposed to speak about it other than to accept it, and you're supposed to challenge anyone who doesn't. And that's terrifying. But let me give you an example of what I mean, guys. And again, if you disagree, call in, leave us a comment. I want to hear this. Facebook should be allowing you to do this right now. assuming that I'm on live on Facebook. Here it is. On March 1st, we heard from the New York State of Politics, which is a Democrat-leaning program, that New York State lawmakers were about to put a tax on ammunition. Now, 1 in 5 people in New York State, approximately, roughly, I believe it's 1 in 5. The last estimate is about 1 in 5 residents of New York State own at least one firearm. And they are looking to tax the ammunition that these private individuals are using. Quote, as we seek to address New York's rise in gun violence, it's incumbent on us as legislators to identify fact-based approaches that will save lives and bring peace to our communities. By taxing ammunition, we are fairly funding research that will help us build smart and effective policies. I want you to think about that. Now think about this. In 2013, disgraced former Governor Andrew Cuomo passed the New York SAFE Act, and he told you he was doing this to make your community safer. And following that, 2018, there was the red flag laws, which were passed in New York State to make you safer, to stop people stop gun violence. Even though many of the legislators, as we showed you when we interviewed Assemblywoman Donna Lopardo, when we interviewed Assemblyman Cliff Crouch, they told you this was a flawed law that would not achieve the goal that it was purported to do, that it would fail, and that it would negatively impact families, that it would separate children from their families as a result of these red flag laws without reducing criminals' access to firearms. They told you that. We've done those interviews. They have been published for years. But now they're going to tax you. They're going to punish you. Now, I want you to think about this. You are a regular American citizen living your life. You are part of the 99.994% of Americans who own a firearm and do not break the law. That's what the numbers actually break out to. 99.994% of all Americans who own a firearm, 165 million people, do not cause a problem with the law ever. Their firearms are not a danger to anyone. Over 350 million firearms. But you now are going to be taxed. This is a tax. Inflation is up 7.9%. It's looking to go up to somewhere between 11 and 15%. We believe 15% is going to be the official number by the middle end of the summer. And they're going to tax you on your ammunition. And that's supposed to somehow protect you. Can you tell me what tax has ever stopped a criminal from committing a crime? I ask everyone that. You tell me. Name, and I'm going to type this in here. Name the tax that has ever prevented any crime ever. Because it doesn't happen. The Crips, the Bloods, MS-13, you name the gang, you name the criminal organization, they don't care about taxes. They don't pay taxes. They are criminals. They don't care about a tax on ammunition. They are there to they want to commit crimes. The only people who are being punished are law-abiding citizens. You are, in fact, being punished for doing what the Second Amendment says you can do, which is to bear arms. You are being punished for actually owning a firearm by a group of progressive Democrats that don't like the fact that you have an arm. Meanwhile, they're out there, they have security. like Cori Bush, who paid $70,000 to provide herself with a private security, even as she defunded the police in Minneapolis, as the people, the public, demanded the police to be increased. So she took away their police and she gave herself a private security so that she was beat safe while you would have to be left on defenseless trying to fight against these criminals. And we see this story over and over again, whether it's the walled homes of Chuck Schumer or Nancy Pelosi, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez living in a gated community in an apartment that costs $15,000 a month. They're not worried. They're protected. You don't matter. You don't get to have armed security. And you definitely don't get to have a firearm. And let me ask you, who do you think this hurts the most? Who do you think this is going to harm the most? Women, the poor, and minorities, blacks and Asians and Hispanics. This is who they are targeting. This is who they are punishing. How dare you be a woman? How dare you be a person of color? How dare you go and own a firearm? The government's going to take care of it, maybe, sort of, defunding the police, so don't worry about it. That's the problem. They're going to punish you. Now, if someone's going to say, well, Mike, you're misunderstanding this. That's not exactly what's going on here. Okay, I'm going to show you the actual bill because no one in the news media likes to actually tell you what the bill is. This is the bill in the New York State Assembly. And trust me, it's in New York today. I guarantee you shortly, you're going to see this in California. You're going to see this in Illinois. You're going to see this in Maryland. You're going to see this throughout the United States, especially in every one of those bluer than blue states across this nation. They're going to copy this law like they copied the New York SAFE Act and many other of these bills that are supposed to protect you. This is bill number A09563. So that you can look this up for yourself, besides the fact that we will have the description of this, the link to this bill in the description. And what does this bill do? It imposes a tax on the sale of ammunition to be deposited into the Gun Violence Research Fund. By the way, remember, appointed Governor Kathy Hochul is telling you that she is not raising any new taxes. This is the Democrats trying to raise new taxes. They want new taxes. They just don't want to tell you it's a tax. Okay, so what does this bill actually do? This bill, if you own ammunition, a 22 caliber or less, in other words, a 22 caliber ammunition, you're going to be charged 2 cents. If you own any other ammo, anything bigger than a 22, then you're going to be paying 5 cents per. That is an increase of 10 or more % on every piece of ammo you could possibly own. Let me show you this. So this is from ammo prices now, out of Ammo Land. And looking at 9mm, one of the more popular guns in America at this time. Looking at 9mm, come on, waiting for it to catch up. There it is. For 9mm ammunition across the United States. And you can see there's been a spike. It's been up. It's been down. It is up at this moment. The average cost is 42 cents. Average cost overall is about 42 cents. And that's for 9mm. You're adding 5 cents to that. That's more than 10%. That's about 12%. That's a tax on each and every single bullet. That's each bullet. So you're paying 10, 11% more. You're being punished. And you say, well, Mike, I don't own, I own a 22. Let's take a look at, say, well, you own a 22. Okay, let's see what it is for 22, because maybe you think, Mike, you just don't understand. And I'm looking at handguns. Okay, something that a woman may have to protect herself from sexual assault. Okay, average price, 11 cents. They're going to add 2. That's 9.6%, roughly. That's called rounded off, it's 10%. That's what they're adding on. They're increasing this cost. This is to punish you per bullet. That's what they're doing. That's what this bill does. And let me ask you again, you're paying a 10% tax, a 10% tax. And how is that going to stop the gangbanger on the corner? How is that going to stop the crackhead on the corner? How is that going to stop anyone from committing a crime? Please, I would love to hear this. Because this is insulting. And by the way, if you haven't heard about this, this bill was presented on March 16th. So it just came out this week, which is why most people aren't aware of it. And to give you an idea, the New York SAFE Act, the red flag laws, there are hundreds of different regulations on the Second Amendment denying you your Second Amendment rights in New York State at this time, like it is in California, like it is in Illinois, like it is in Washington State, Maryland, many other states. Let me look at the answer. How well have they worked for you? This is 2020. This is from the New York State government. This is the Division of Criminal Justice Services, the Gun Involved Violence Elimination Initiative, or the GIVE report, which we often point to give you evidence about what's the disparity between what politicians say about gun control and what actually happens. This is New York State's data issued May 2021, the full year report of 2020. And what do you see? We see that there was a 74.5% increase in shooting incidents involving injury. There was an 82.2% increase in shooting victims, people who were actually hit. There was an 80% increase in the number of individuals killed by gun violence. Mind you, this is after the New York SAFE Act, where you were promised that you would be safe. This is after the red flag laws, where you were promised you would be safe. This is after multiple initiatives to try and deny you the ability to own a firearm because the government was going to make you safe, because the government is able to protect you, except it doesn't. That's 2020. You'll say, Mike, well, that was a year where we had a lot of riots. There was a lot of insanity in the United States. Fantastic. Let's take a look at the New York GEV report issued March 8th of 2022, which is for the reporting period. This is for February 28th, 2022. Looking at 2021 versus 2022, at this very moment, real world, New York State, a 7% increase. That's an increase on top of 2020. That's an increase on top of 2021. This is now the third year in a row where we're seeing an increase in violence, in incidents, shooting incidents that injured someone. That's still another 7% increase. The 5-year average, an increase of 42%. Number of victims, 9.4%. An increase of 46.3% over the 5 years. Individuals killed by gun violence. That is an 8.7% increase as of February. That's a 52.4% increase over the 5-year average. This is after the New York SAFE Act. This is after the red flag laws. This is after all of the regulations trying to stop. Because gangs and criminals don't care. And now you're going to pay 10% more per bullet that you need to protect yourself. And that's somehow supposed to make you safer. Because everything else has failed. Demonstrably, I am showing you New York State's data, and I can show you the same equivalent data with similar results in California. I can show you that in Washington State, in Maryland, in Illinois. I can show you the data from the FBI and it will show you the same exact correlation. That they are not making you safe, they are making you defenseless. They are punishing you for being able to actually live the Second Amendment. Now, here's the thing that's important about that. You're not supposed to think about that. You're not supposed to question it. When the politicians came out, and they went to the state of politics, they pushed this out to all of their Democratic voters, and they said, you're going to be okay because we're going to make you safer. What did they say in this? That we will identify fact-based approaches that will save lives and bring peace to our communities. They have been saying that same thing since 2013. I can go back further, but just going to 2013, nearly a decade, they have been telling you the same sentence every single time. And the only result that is happening because of this is that you are less likely to own a firearm, you are less likely to protect yourself, and criminals don't care. Now, if you think I'm wrong, if you think I misunderstand this, please tell me why. I know I'm very passionate about this. I speak at colleges often talking about the Second Amendment and the consequences of laws that are being enacted that are taking away our freedoms. So I'm very passionate about this. I understand. I'm a member of the Liberty First Foundation. I was just having a conversation on Friday. I was part of their live stream talking about some of these things. I understand I have passion. I am willing to hear someone from the other side to tell me why I am wrong. I have over and over again, I have asked Representative Antonio Delgado of the New York 19th District to come onto this program to have a conversation with voters about why he is, whether or not he's effective in Congress and whether or not he should be reelected. He has refused. For 6 months, he has refused to respond to any question we have asked. And I ask him now, Representative Antonio Delgado, do you support taxing per bullet? Do you support denying women, the poor, and people of color the ability to exercise their Second Amendment rights to protect themselves from the absolute evidence of more and more violence in our communities throughout New York State? Representative Delgado, do you believe that? You think I am wrong? Tell me why. I asked that of members of the Assembly. Assemblywoman Donna Lapardo, who I happen to know and have known for years. She's been on this program before. I asked her, Assemblywoman Donna Lapardo of the New York 123rd District, can you tell me why anyone should support this bill, adding a tax burden at a time of inflation and other burdens affecting American families as we see crime increasing in the United States significantly because of gangs and deranged individuals? How is this going to make us safer? Am I asking the wrong question? I ask you, folks, and I'm talking with you. This is a conversation with you. Am I asking the wrong question? Am I understanding the wrong thing? Because the data is telling us very clearly what they are doing doesn't work. It has never worked. And it is in failing. When they fail, it hurts us all. I'm looking at this tax, and I want to make this as clear and personal to people as they can be. This tax, okay, a 10% tax on ammunition, does not stop what happened in my community, 3 blocks from my house. An 18-year-old kid shot a 17-year-old kid on Main Street in the middle of the day, 1 block from Binghamton High School. That was my community. And a tax, a 10% tax, a 50%, nothing stops that kid. The New York SAFE Act did not stop that 18-year-old from shooting the 17-year-old. The New York red flag laws did not stop that 18-year-old from shooting that 17-year-old. a tax on ammunition isn't going to stop that shooting 1 block from a high school. That isn't going to make you safer. It didn't make me safer. It doesn't make my community safer. But the reaction and the answer from Democrats has been, well, the gun is the problem. By the way, we're going to tax you more. We're going to punish you for having rights. And we're not going to address the root problem, which is, why did that 18-year-old kid think the only answer in his life at that moment was to shoot a 17-year-old kid? There's your problem. That's the issue that needs to be addressed. If you want to tell me you're trying to figure out how to fix gun violence, let's start with what makes an 18-year-old kid decide that the only answer in their life is to shoot another individual, especially an unarmed individual. Start there. Am I asking a crazy question, folks? Is this too much to ask? If you think I'm wrong, please call in 607-242-1582. If you think I don't understand the issue, call in 607-242-1582. If you think a tax on bullets is going to protect anyone, please call 607-242-1582. If you are a woman and you think you are going to be protected from sexual assault because there's a tax of 5 cents on a bullet, please call in to 607-242-1582. I want to hear your voice. Don't tell me I'm ugly. Don't tell me I'm stupid. Don't tell me that I'm some kind of Trumper. I don't care. Those are feelings. Tell me why you think that's going to make you safe. I honestly and truly want to hear your voice, because if there is something that I do not understand, because it doesn't make sense to me, but if there's some way it makes sense to you, please tell me, because I would like to be wrong. If it only costs 5 cents per bullet to cut the 70% increase in violence that we have been seeing, I'm happy to pay it. I'm happy to pay it if that would reduce it. I just have absolutely no reason to believe that it will. And I don't think you do either. And this is one of the questions that the major mainstream media should be asking of elected officials like Assemblywoman Donna Lapardo, like New York 19 Congressman Antonio Delgado, like we should be asking appointed Governor Kathy Hochul, like we should be asking Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer. We should be asking each and every one of these elected officials how this is going to protect us. We should have this discussion, and the answer that we're getting from the social media internet overlords is silence that person, shut down that channel, don't let them reach more people. No one should ask these questions. You should just consume, and you don't need to comment. And I think that's terrifying. That's not freedom, not in America nor anywhere in the world. But I'm more than happy to hear you tell me, anyone to tell me, well, Mike, that's wrong. Okay, why? Please. I'm not going to beat up on you. I'm not going to attack you. I'm not going to make personal attacks. We don't do that on this channel. I will simply ask you why, and we can have a conversation. Like intelligent adults who have brain cells and can make decisions without being told what that decision should be by some elected official or some news media personality. Because I have respect for you as an individual, that even if you disagree with me, you have a reason. And I want to hear it. But the news media doesn't have that respect for you. They don't believe that. They don't believe you're capable of that. They want you to be a puppet. They want you to obey. That's why our channel, in March alone, has been suffering from 3 separate attacks to silence our voice. It's not working. We're still doing the live stream. We're still going to post on Rumble. We're still going to post on Odyssey, on BitChute. We're still going to get this out. We're still going to interview Matt Brainerd and provide you that interview. We're still going to talk on Discourse. We're still going to be here. We've been doing it for 15 years. We're not going away. And that's the problem. They want us to go away. They want you to go away because they do not want you to think. You may disagree, but that is the conclusion I come to. And they're doing it with the backdrop of Russia, when everyone's distracted with Russia and the Ukraine, so that no one's noticing, hey, where did that channel go? Where did these voices go? Why isn't anyone asking these questions anymore? Because the media should be asking questions. And in this case, as an example, how is 5 cents per bullet going to stop the gangbanger or the crackhead on the corner from shooting mom, my sister, my daughter? How is that going to protect them? Please explain that to me. I really, really desperately want to understand how 5 cents per bullet is going to protect grandma walking across the street as some gangbanger drives on by and sprays bullets. Please explain to me how this is going to protect the kid 1 block away from the high school being shot by another kid at 1 block away from the high school. Please explain how 5 cents is going to make the difference. Because if you can't explain that, don't do the tax. Stop wasting our time and our money. Stop distracting us with this I'm doing something mentality and actually be effective. If you're going to be elected, be effective. I will blame Republicans, conservatives, Democrats, libertarians, all equally right alongside the progressives and the Democrats who are pushing these ideas. It needs to be fought against, and we need to denounce this from the jump. Don't let this move forward. This is a waste of time. Because if they pass it, and it is passed exactly word for word of what I have just shown you, it will not help you. It will not protect you. It will take away your freedom. It will make it harder for you to be free, but it gives you no benefit. It will benefit the government. They'll get more of your money. It will benefit some bureaucrat because they'll have a job and they'll have your money. But it's not going to help you. So why are we doing it? Or does that not make sense? If I don't make sense, please tell me why. If I'm not making sense, if that doesn't seem like a legitimate question to you, tell me, Mike, you're completely off base and you've misunderstood it. Please tell me. I'm not above saying I got it wrong. I'm not above saying I misunderstood. Please tell me how this is incorrect, because I don't think it is. And this is one of the things that YouTube was terrified about letting you be able to see. By the way, please remember, wherever you see this, whether it's on YouTube, Facebook Live, you see it over on Rumble or BitChute or Odyssey, you see this on Discord, please like, share this, subscribe. Please subscribe, because that's the thing. The closer we get to 1,234 subscribers, all the algorithms kick in and we're able to reach more and more people around the United States and around the world. And we're able to have more conversations. And I truly believe, because I believe in individuals, I believe that you, the audience, are smart and you have a life experience. And because you're smart, because you have a life experience, you can come up with solutions. And I think the more people that talk about their individual solutions, the closer we get to a real solution, a widespread solution, the correct solution. But if we keep it limited to a handful of politicians who are busy pushing an agenda and making money for themselves, well, then it's useless. Then we get nothing. Then we get the New York SAFE Act Then we get the red flag laws. Then we get a tax on the bullets. And in the meantime, we see that violent crime goes up 54%. Excuse me, 52.4% of individuals killed by gun violence because they have failed. They failed in doing their job. Hang on, I think I'm burning myself here. Yep, almost burned down the house. Okay. So, and if you think I'm wrong, if you think if you think I'm misunderstanding if you think I'm misunderstanding the data, that I don't understand the information that is here, please tell me. If you think the source, if you think New York State being the source of the evidence I am presenting to you, and you think that's not good enough, please tell me. Tell me why. And I take that silence that I hear week after week after week, the silence from representatives like Representative Antonio Delgado of the New York 19th District, the silence that I hear occasionally from individuals like County Executive Jason Garnar or Assemblywoman Donna Lopardo, and many other individuals, their silence speaks volumes, folks, because they won't address this. And I don't mean to pick on Jason Garnar. He's a friend. I know him. He's a good man. I'm not attacking him personally. I'm talking about politics. I don't know Kathy Hochul, but I would like to believe she's not an evil autocrat, dictator. I would like to believe that, but I can only tell you what her policies are telling me. I know Assemblywoman Donna Lopardo for a decade now. I don't think she's an evil person, but look at the bills that are being passed and being pushed through the assembly that she allows to go through, that she's not taking on, and somehow they're supposed to be protecting us. And I have to ask, how? How is this helping us? How is this protecting us? Isn't that a fair question to ask? Let me tie this back to, and when we see these things happening, and we see that people who are asking the questions, like this channel, like many other small channels. Oh, hang on. Thank you for calling in. This is No Soundbites Allowed. I'm your host, Michael Voss, and may I ask what's your first name?
Hey, Mike, it's Jason.
Hey, Jason. Good to have you on the program. What's up?
Yeah, I kind of had a question.
Sure.
Regarding the bullets and actually ammunition and firearms when it comes to taxation.
Sure.
At all. Has there ever been any litigation, or not litigation, but any trials actually done on that, as far as a Second Amendment, as far as taxation on those items?
All right. I'm sorry.
In the past,
So
as far as the legality of them actually doing so.
It's legal for them to put it in tax. Sure.
Well, I know, but I mean, has anybody argued, because it's, you have, a right that, you should not have any restrictions being put on your ability to actually purchase an item without any sort of, restrictions from the government.
But within a state, it is perfectly allowed to be able to, a state can put taxes on anything that it wants. And across state lines, that's where it comes under the Commerce Clause for the United States Congress. So, and there is nothing that says they can't put a tax on anything. You can pay a tax on, well, think about it. Food. Food is taxed.
Yeah. Well, is it? I mean,
Yeah.
well, they can. Well, the thing is, though, is that food isn't actually, a protected, right under the, the Constitution. The Second Amendment is.
Well, no, it is, because the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. If you cannot eat, you cannot pursue happiness, you can't have life, nor can you have liberty. Food is an essential item of life. So, and even with that, it is still taxed. So you can tax anything. The key to remember here is the Constitution and every single law in America is a negative right. Let me explain what that means. Now, people have heard of that. The Constitution doesn't grant laws. Every other constitution in every other country grants people rights. In the United States, you have every right to everything, always, from the moment you are born. And by agreement between the Constitution and the laws that we pass, whether in Congress or in the state, we give up a right to those lawmakers to restrict ourselves. So they can't do anything unless we allow them to. And when we allow them to, they can do anything. So they can tax food. Whether we think they should or shouldn't, if we don't speak up, they can and they do tax food. Should there be a tax on food? Maybe, maybe not. That's an entirely different discussion. But they do because we gave up that right to not have food taxed. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, to a degree. The food, though, like I said, it's, not as definitive. I think those, the Second Amendment, because the bottom line is what I was getting at is just that,
Okay.
You've got different states with different laws and different taxes, and
Yes.
and any way that wanted, if tomorrow New York State wanted to put a 5,000 percent tax on all firearms, and all ammunition, they could do so in a second.
Yes.
And that would basically be such a burdensome restriction that it would technically eliminate the Second Amendment. And
Right.
and anybody within the court, being put in front of them would obviously say that that is a complete restriction on the Second Amendment, and it's
Okay.
meant to do so.
Okay. Now I get what you're saying. So you're saying we've created such a burdensome law, similar to like the Jim Crow laws, the laws
Right.
where you need to be able to read various paragraphs or do math to be able to vote. Those kind of laws where it's meant to be restrictive. It is a restrictive law preventing you from exercising your rights. That is a fine line, and that's why we have the Supreme Court. What would happen is, like in this case, you could say, well, a 10% tax per bullet is restrictive and prevents me from being able to exercise my Second Amendment rights. And you would go to court. And we have to take it all the way up to the Supreme Court. That's why the Ninth Circuit Court last year, there was Hawaii versus, and I forget who it was. I think it was Young, but it was Hawaii versus someone. The Ninth Circuit Court decided that you do not have the right to protect yourself outside your home. That is a fact. That is what the Ninth Circuit Court found, which is, many people say, is an overburden and restriction on your freedom, and therefore it's going to the Supreme Court. But that at the moment is the law of the land, that you do not have a right to protect yourself anywhere except in your home. And even then, depending on the state rule, you may or may not have that right. That's kind of terrifying. So the remedy that you're asking about, which I think is what you're asking, is what's the remedy? We go to court. We go to the Supreme Court and say, the Constitution, would the Constitution see this as a restriction on my freedom? I think the answer would be yes, but I think the better answer is, let's not get there. Let's not make this a law. Let's have this discussion first and foremost and say, well, this is at the best case completely useless and ineffective. Therefore, it does not need to exist. Let's not do this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's just they incrementally continue to put more pressure, on your ability, obviously, to own firearms and to be able to purchase things, to the point where it just eventually slowly crushes. It just almost makes you wonder if for example, as far as the taxation on it, I mean, what if even a county decided at one point that they're going to do something astronomical like that, on ammunition and firearms? I mean, would they be able to, do something that extreme?
Yes, absolutely. They can.
And so that there,
if voters, let me be clear. Yes, they can if voters give them the right to do so. Now, people Our media likes to make it seem like we don't answer, or rather, we answer to our politicians. They make a decision and we have to live with it. We are essentially peasants and they are neo-nobles. They get to make the rules and we get to live with them. That's what the media would like you to believe. That is what politicians want you to believe in their comments. That's not true. It's the exact opposite. We get to tell them what they can do and how far they can go. But because the media has warped that, because social media silences people when we question our leaders, our elected officials, they seem to believe that they have more power, which is why they overreach as much as they do. We need to vote. We need to write letters. We need to speak up. We need to challenge them. We need more programs like this one. Doesn't have to be me. I'm not telling people you have to be attached to me, but I'm saying whichever program you want to support, that's fine. But we need to raise our voices up, because if we don't, they keep going. Because yes, a county can pass, they can go to the county legislators with this idea and say, no, it's not 5 cents. It's going to be $5 per bullet. They can do that. And if the people don't complain, if the people don't speak up, that will get passed and that will be the law for that county. Absolutely.
That's interesting. Yeah, because I mean that right there would actually put the question of taxation on you know, your Second Amendment, you know, whether or not it would be, you know, legal for them to do so. Because that's the thing is that to have something passed like that, then, you know, if somebody did bring it to court, you know, that's the question is that can, you know, because that's the ultimate question. Can the government basically just tax, you know, something out of existence, your constitutional rights?
Absolutely, they can. Absolutely, they can if we allow them to. That is, the power to stop that is in every single person watching this program, every single person who is an American citizen, minus the non-citizen voting in New York State, as an example. We have non-citizens, 800,000 of them, potentially voting in our elections. In San Francisco, you have non-citizens who are voting in elections. That will complicate that. You have the potential for election, a lack of election integrity that can have an impact. So there are other factors, but generally, you can fight this. Dow mentions, and he just brought up, there was a similar legislation in Illinois, October 2021, and they lost because people fought against it. So, yeah, it's scary when you think. Remember, I'll give you a great example, talking about the pandemic, and I have to be careful about speaking about this because obviously people are trying to shut down the channel.
Well, as long as you're off YouTube, so.
Well, no, because again, I've been attacked by Facebook. I've been attacked by all of them. I've been threatened to have this my voice shut down, your voice being shut down. So let me be careful on how I say this, but there was the Operation Crush COVID that was initiated by Broome County Executive Jason Garnar. And in that bill, that regulation that was unofficial, even though he was having a press conference, he was using the full power of his elected office to tell American people, you will be in solitary confinement every other day. The only reason why that didn't happen is because people said, you're out of your mind, you've overreached, and no, we do not accept that. But he did it. And that's the part that should scare people. He came up with the idea. He had a press conference covered by the news media. And his excuse was, it's unofficial, but I, as the elected official with all of the power of New York State government, am telling you that you are going to be a prisoner in your home every other day and you cannot walk outside. Very similar to what we saw in Australia and in New Zealand. Except in the United States, we have the right to say, you're out of your mind. No. Australia and New Zealand don't have that right because they only have the rights given by government. We have the rights by birth. So we said in Broome County, you're out of your mind. That's a terrible idea. You've overreached your power. I was one of the many groups who were saying, no, Jason, you're wrong. That's not within your power. You can't do that. And so that went away. But if we didn't speak up, if YouTube, Facebook, the internet overlords were successful, if progressives who want to shut down this channel, like the progressive leaders of tomorrow, if they were successful, our voice would have been silenced, and maybe that would have been a rule. And imagine that the government could tell you at any point in time, you can't leave your home. Imagine that.
Yeah, I mean that was insane. And the bottom line is that you always had a question is that go and try to enforce that. How is that going to look? Oh, it's going to look like Australia. It's where the cops are literally just beating the living crap out of people for not wearing a mask or not properly putting a mask on right after you have a sip of your coffee or something like that, or holding a mug without actually any liquid beverages in it. I mean, that's a sort of authoritarian kind of bureaucracy that we would get. And the thing is, Jason Garner would have been more than happy to actually have that implemented in full.
He tried to do it. So yeah, he was happy because he suggested it. Now he'll tell you, and I know Jason, he'll say, well, no, it was for the best interest of the public, blah, blah. Fantastic. I understand why you said it. It's still illegal. It's still an overreach of government. The excuse doesn't take away the authoritarian nature of what you're doing. But if no one's around to say that's wrong, who's going to stop them?
Yeah, and when you can't say it's wrong, it's kind of interesting. I've noticed that, it's almost to some degree that it's been, honestly hurting the Democrats at this point because of all the censoring that's been going on and the lack of voices. Because if people are able to speak up and counter argument this entire time, then things wouldn't have probably escalated as far as they have to some degree. And people wouldn't have been so agitated at the Democrats, because eventually the Democrats would have backed down because they would have realized, how, wrong they were. But the thing is that they never got a check and balance because YouTube and Facebook and everybody was shutting everybody, out from having opinions. So what did everybody do? They did what they had to do. They had to be quiet,
But that's the wrong answer. But that's the wrong answer. We shouldn't be quiet. Yeah. YouTube has attacked me. I'm not quiet. Facebook attacked me. I'm not quiet. I'm not going to back down. I'm not going to let them to silence this voice. Again, no one is obligated to agree. You're not obligated to watch this program, and you should never be. But at the same time, that doesn't mean you get to silence me. Because if they silence this channel, which they are trying to do, if we're getting 3 different attacks, 2 of them being absolutely thrown out the water, one of them for quoting the news media, let me ask you, if they're silencing us, what's going to happen to the average citizen? And that's with the fact that I know this channel, we know members of Congress, we know almost every single politician in central and southern tier New York. We've interviewed them for years. We are involved politically. We are active. And again, we're small, but we're bigger than the average individual. And if they're silencing us, what are they going to do to you when we're gone?
Yeah, I mean, you were being silenced technically over the definition of, I believe, effective.
Yes.
Because you believe that, something that they say is 32%, effective. You're like, well, that's not effective. If it's 62% non-effective, then how can it be 2% effective or whatever? You know what I mean? It's just like
if it's 2/3 not effective, then isn't that mean it's not effective?
Yeah, and this is not like the half glass full, half empty. This is like the glass mostly empty, and mostly not full. That's pretty much what you're saying. But the thing is that that's unacceptable. That point of view is because as long as there is just a slight, what they call, an ability to do whatever it's supposed to do, then it is effective. To some degree, it's never not effective. You always have to speak in the positive narrative.
Well, I have to go with the approved narrative of the major mainstream media. And I'm sorry, that's not, again, and as an example, and I want to go back to this. So let me ask you, Do you believe that putting a 5-cent tax, if you're paying an extra 5 cents per bullet, let's say for for a 22 long round, it's an extra 2 cents, which would make it approximately 9.4% increase. You're paying an extra 2 cents. Do you think that's going to stop crime in New York State?
Well, no, absolutely not. I mean, the bottom line is the
Then why
question
are
is
we
what
doing it?
yeah, so I mean, so they're yeah, I mean, so they're specifically carving out, a tax, as it would be, alcohol. So they want to kind of, do that sort of thing. They don't, I guess, yeah, I don't know. And obviously once they start to tax, things and they got it in the works, it's only really just a sleight of hand for them to raise that tax. I mean,
It
what's
will
I mean,
always. When have you ever seen them truly get rid of any tax?
No, I mean, it's all they have to do is basically just, pretty much just, cross out a line here saying, oh, we're just going to do 5 cents. We'll do 50 cents, we'll just pop it up. Nobody's going to notice the difference, So, and they would do that in a second, and they'd hope anybody see, because once they can get through, the first wave, the initial, that initial push, then, it's done and it's over, and they've already got, their foot in the door. And again, it's just to slowly turn the gears, and then and press people, so eventually people just do not want to spend the extra money on it. I mean, the initial cost is not going to be the initial problem. It's what they plan to do in the future that is really what you should be looking for.
Well, it always gets worse. It always gets.
Yeah.
Look at our deficit. We're now at $30 trillion in debt. That's destroying your dollar. That is literally the 7% inflation. You get a raise this year of 5%. You didn't get a raise. You're still down 2% minimum. That's not including the increase of what you're going to see in what you're paying on your credit cards, your loans, because interest rates are going higher. You're losing money. Day one, January, you were down 7%. Day one. So you're not winning here. You're losing. It's just a matter of how fast you're losing. And they want to word it as, what did Biden call it in January? This was turning around. This is excellent, wonderful. Our economy is doing fantastic. This is what he said in January. We covered it on this program. It's a lie. And now we're told, well, it's about Russia. No, that's not true. But
it's Russia's fault, you know? And so, and that's one of the things that kills you. You watch this inflation going on, and basically it's too much money going after too few products, basically. And the thing is that's what we have a problem with gas right now, right? And I don't know if you've read, I mean, you've probably already have heard about the government or the administration, Biden administration was planning on pushing out, gas cards at one point, but realized that the backlash was going to basically crush them.
Rationing gas, yeah.
No, not rationing. They were actually going to give people gas cards, like, for money, to actually, so they could actually afford to pay for the gas.
No, I
because
didn't.
Gas prices were too high.
I didn't hear about that, but that's also a stupid idea.
Oh, yeah.
Because what are you doing? You're spending money we don't have, which makes the money that we do have worth less. It is decreasing every time they print more money. Your money is worth less and less. It is a stupid idea. It is part of the definition of inflation.
Yeah. I mean, that was the problem. I think that the administration realizes that, boy, if we really want to, help Americans understand what inflation is, then, this is probably a bad idea, because that was it. I mean, you give people, that was things. There's a limited amount of gas right now. And people, the more the price goes up, people are probably going to drive less, But if government gives them, money to cut that down, so that $4 only costs $2 because of the subsidies that the government gives people to drive. Think what people are going to do. They're going to drive more. And what's that going to do? That's going to make there be less gas. And what happens when there's less gas? There's going to be higher prices. So it's this negative feedback loop. And the problem is that a lot of people don't understand economics enough to understand these feedback loops. But if the administration did that, then people all of a sudden probably would start to actually get that click and go, oh, yeah, this is a stupid negative feedback loop. Oh, where else have they done this?
Well, I wish
everything else in our economy.
I wish that was correct. But Jason, the fact is, as an example, I know that there is a progressive somewhere who is saying right now that, yes, I know because there's at least two of them in New York State that have put in this bill. This is Bill, again, 9563, that have said, hey, here's a wonderful idea. We're going to charge tax. And again, this doesn't protect anyone. It just prevents people from exercising their rights. If you want to tell me you want to protect people, then give me something that's effective. This isn't, by any definition, in any way, going to prevent crime. So why punish people? And the problem is, people aren't hearing about it. And when they do hear about it, all they hear from the major news media and the social media is, this is a wonderful idea. It's for your benefit. The government is doing something. I hate those words. Doing something to protect you. This is for your good. And I can't imagine how. And I've yet to hear from any politician, Republican, Democrat, progressive, libertarian, conservative. I've yet to hear from anyone who says, okay, this is how this protects you. But yet the media is pushing this out like this is a great idea, just like we saw from the State of Politics, from their website, a Democratic website, City of Albany. Nick Reisman, who wrote the article, is posing this as this is a wonderful way to protect you. And it has absolutely no element of protection. But they want to shut down this channel for telling you this doesn't make sense. Because no one can explain how this is going to protect you. And it's just one aspect of it.
Yeah.
Of what we're
It's
saying.
funny, you should get somebody else on, to say, well, if they just take the money, that they tax the bullets on that people need now to defend themselves because basically, police have been defunded. Why don't you take the money on the tax for the bullets now and then fund the police, with the tax on the bullets that people need because, you've defunded the police. Now, how about we do that feedback loop right there?
That would be, the problem with that for the progressives, I believe, and I don't know for sure, is they would say that it's privatizing police at that point, which may or may not be a good thing. But I can tell you that the progressive leaders of tomorrow and others will absolutely disagree with that and say, no, you can't do that. Even though those very same progressives, like the Democratic Socialists of America, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Cori Bush, Anna Presley, they all pay for private police. So they have privatized police, paid for by the public. But you and I can't do that. And they don't want you to even have the idea of that right. It's really upsetting. Let me ask you. I want to ask, looking at China, looking at what's going on right now, I don't know if you saw at the beginning of the show, we were talking about what was being said out of Taiwan and their military analysts. Did you see that part of the show?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think the conclusion I came to is Taiwan is begging the United States to support them, to defend them, and to live up to the agreements we have made because they don't trust the Biden-Harris administration? Do you think I was right?
Yeah, I mean, the Chinese are scared, or not Chinese, but the Taiwanese are scared to death right now. And the thing is that, and I think I mentioned this last week, the longer this, and I have, because I constantly say, it's, Biden was hoping that this would have ended, or at least, Russia would have taken over the whole place, like a week ago. So basically he can get rid of the sanctions and try to get some of this crushing sanctions that are really hurting us more than anybody else, relieved. And the problem is that the longer this goes on, the more deep and rooted the Chinese get, because the thing is that this is all, again, going to be about perspective, and then what the Americans can tolerate. And the thing is, though, is that the longer we have the situation with the gas prices and all, these other parts of the economy, feeling these pressures, Americans are going to give up. So as soon as if Russia ever, gets out of the way, and then all of a sudden Taiwan, happens, Americans are not going to have, that whole, hey, we'll go all sacrifice, a few cents in our gas or a few cents of this, because we'll be broke by then. Everybody's going to be really hurting bad, and they're going to be like, screw it. You know what? China can do what they want, have what they want. Nobody's going to care at that point. And the thing is, the Chinese are banking on this. And not
Well,
to mention the fact that the relationship that they're actually building, with Russia, and not only that, the new thing with the Saudis and the deal with the oil now. I don't know if
I saw that. And well, here's the thing. I believe, and you can tell me if you think I'm wrong. Anyone can call into the program. I'm going to let you go in a moment. But I believe that when we see that China is snubbing the United States, insulting Joe Biden in a phone call, telling us that we're completely wrong and off base and we have no power. When we see that Russia, Vladimir Putin, is ignoring Joe Biden, Secretary of State Antony Blinken, Kamala Harris, laughing in their faces. When we're seeing that Iran is going to get the Iran nuclear deal and be funded to fund global terror from the United States by the releasing of sanctions. When we see these things, no one believes that the United States is strong. No one believes the United States is strong. And I think that's one of the root problems we have right now, and why the world is getting so much more destabilized, is because no one trusts that Joe Biden has any power, or that he's even looking to protect America. Do you think I'm right? You can tell me if you think I'm wrong.
No, you're right. I mean, there is no strength. The problem is that when Biden came in, he completely gave. Actually, his entire campaign was about giving up, his position of strength. The position of strength in the United States had was the mass production of, oil and gas that were done. When he came in there, he says, you know what, I'm going to shut everything down. There's going to be no new leases. There's going to be all these regulations. And you know what? The writing was for those investors. Those investors who had money put into those fields thought, you know what? Maybe we should diversify. Maybe we should pull our funds out of there and put it into something else that we can make more money on. And you know what they did? They did. They pulled their money out of there. And that put us in the position we're in now. That put Russia in a position where they're the ones who were supplying all the gas, to Europe, rather than the United States supplying gas to Europe. And that's the reason why, we have that the war is going on, because Russia was empowered, by economical choices that Joe Biden made.
Well, yeah, I think so. I think so. Let me do this. I want to make sure that other people also have an opportunity to speak and to tell me whether they think what we're talking about is right or wrong, or if we've missed something. But of course, I always value whenever you give a call into the program and when we speak. And sometimes, for people who don't know, we sometimes meet up over at the Belmar after the show, and we get to talk even there. You're a great supporter of the program, and I always value your voice. I value every voice. But I want to give some people a chance to call in. Was there anything else you wanted to mention before I let you go?
Well, I mean, just the one thing though that I don't think that actually I've heard is just starting to kind of get some news is the wheat. The fact is that there's food shortages. Certain countries that are totally reliant on Russian wheat are now not able to get them,
Yep.
and we're starting to see that they're starting to starve. And it's just a matter of time, until this crisis, really starts to show up. And this will probably only take about a week, because once you run out of food and people start starving, well, they die. And
No, people aren't realizing that in October, we're going to be short on food too. But I'm going to get into that in the program in a little bit.
Yep.
Yes.
So, all right.
All right, Jason. Thank you. And I will be looking for some of your comments as we continue.
All right. Yep. Have a good one. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye. So, folks, yes, you too can call into the program at 607-242-1582 to let your voice be heard. Whether you agree with the program or you disagree with us, it's perfectly fine either way. Not to tell us whether you think you feel like I'm old or I'm ugly or something stupid like that. I don't care. But to tell us why you think what's happening in the world is affecting you positively or negatively. Because we want to hear your voice. Maybe we misunderstand. Maybe there's more information than what we've seen here. We want to have your voice because we think it's important for you to be informed, not to be a mindless drone told what you should feel, told what you should think, but to actually have an opinion and to ask questions, because that makes America strong. That's why people come to America from everywhere in the world and have been for more than 100 years. There's a reason why we are the nation people come to, not leave. And it's because we can question our leaders and we can question laws that are being put out there. It's the reason why you don't see what was done by Justin Trudeau with emergency powers being done by Kathy Hochul in New York State or by Joe Biden. You can't just shut people's sites down. You can't take their money. Although it seems like they're trying. I mean, there are 86,000 IRS agents that are looking at your bank accounts right now. They're looking at your credit cards. They're looking at your PayPal. They're looking at all of your transactions and trying to figure out how much money you have so they can take it. That is a fact. And that's troubling. That is extremely troubling. As is the fact that Russia has now Russia has won on the Iran nuclear deal. Iran has won on the Iran nuclear deal. And you and I are losing. And global stability is losing. Our friends across the pond in the United Kingdom, our friends in France and Germany are going to suffer for this. They're going to be punished because of the growth of global terror. Because as we're seeing, as being reported by CNBC, that we have now seen, and I want to get exactly to the quote here so that you can see it properly. The Iran nuclear deal is about to go forward. Here it is. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said Tuesday that he had received written guarantees from the United States that its demands would be met, meaning that the Iran nuclear deal talks, will go forward. The nearly simultaneous release of British-Iranian dual nationals from years of Iranian detention back to the United Kingdom and a reported United Kingdom repayment of decades-old $530 million in debt to Iran have improved prospects for an agreement. The deal could come together quite quickly, potentially as soon as this week, according to the Eurasian Group. Can you imagine? So Russia, which has agreements with Iran, which is allowing them to be able to sell oil through Iran, has been guaranteed by the United States government that what they wanted is going to go through, that their deals, which helps to remove sanctions from them, are going to be okay so that Joe Biden can turn around and say he's improved global peace. He's passed the Iran nuclear deal, and Iran is less likely to make a nuclear bomb, which Iran itself does not agree with. Iran itself has said that they will continue to make nuclear weapons. Iran has said itself that they will make an ICBM, and they have said continuously that they want to destroy America. Doesn't matter if you're a progressive, doesn't matter if you're a socialist, doesn't matter if you're a part of the Democratic Socialists of America, especially the Ithaca chapter, which believes in violence. It doesn't matter if you're a member of Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow. They don't care because you don't believe in their religion the way they believe in their religion, and therefore they want to destroy America. They want to destroy Israel. They want to destroy Europe. And now they are going to get billions, hundreds of billions, to be able to fund global terror just like they did in 2016 when the then Secretary of State John Kerry went on to CNBC and told America that the United States was indirectly funding global terror. So Iran's going to win. They're going to be able to get more global terror and build an ICBM to drop a nuclear bomb in the middle of Iowa. And Russia's going to get what they want, the ability to continue to sell oil and goods through Iran so that they are going to be able to make money, offsetting all of these historic sanctions, according to the Biden administration. So they get an outlet, and you and I get to be less safe. Now, you may say, Mike, I do not agree with that. I think you misunderstand the Iran nuclear deal. Fantastic. I am willing to have that conversation. It seems our elected officials aren't willing to have that conversation. Look around, ask Antonio Delgado, ask Nancy Pelosi, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Cory Bush, Ilhan Omar. Go and ask Jerry Nadler or Adam Schiff. Ask them about this. Ask them how this is going to make us safer when Iran is actively making an ICBM, an intercontinental ballistic missile, to drop a bomb on the United States, which is being funded by the release of sanctions. Ask them how giving more money to Iran, the global leader in funding international terrorism. Hang on one second. Thank you for calling in. This is Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier. I'm your host, and you're on the program. Can I ask, what is your first name, caller?
Hey, it's Dal. How you doing?
Hey, Dal. What's going on?
Oh, I was just calling to let you guys know what I did with the bill 89 or 895, whatever that is.
That's what you're talking.
9563.
9563. Yes. Go ahead.
So for those of you that live in New York State, you actually have a direct line to New York State Senate. Through the .gov website, there's actually a spot where you can follow bills as they go through the process. So where they're introduced, they go to committee, and so on. One of the things that you can do when you log in, you have to create an ID so that you can prove that you're a constituent. Once you get in there, it will actually tie you to your senator, and then you can follow these bills. And one of the things that they give you as an option on their dashboard that you can, as a constituent, approve, or like say aye or nay, and give your support or opposition to that bill.
Okay.
And then it allows you to send a direct email comment or your reasoning for your opposition directly to your senator. Now, I've been trying to find one for our assemblymen as well, but they don't have that on the website. I don't know why you can do it for the Senate, but not for the Assembly. But anyway,
well, we know why. We know why. They don't want to hear you. They don't want to hear your voice. Right. That's why.
But I sent my representative is Representative Senator Akshar.
Yes.
And I sent him my opposition to the excise tax. And it's, Jason was asking about earlier whether there was legislation that was for or against the right to tax the ammunition on the Second Amendment. That has been a point of contention because the Supreme Court didn't want to really touch that. And even before that, before Cruikshanks, which was one of the landmark cases in the Second Amendment battle, for whether the states have the right to limit firearms and so on and so forth.
Right.
They pretty much left it as, well, you can regulate your militia, and really the right to own a firearm was not contested as for individual purposes. It was, if you're part of a militia, you have to have firearms. It was Cruikshanks and subsequent subsequent judicial decisions after that solidified individuals' right to bear arms. And there's no specific judicial decision from the Supreme Court that says the taxation is a form of firearm control. They have never, that case has never been seen by the Supreme Court.
Right, because it's a matter of states' rights. It hasn't raised up that high yet.
Right, and I think if you want to preserve the Second Amendment in its entirety, you have to see the relationship between arms and what they utilize in order to be well maintained. You could have functioning firearm, but that firearm is useless without the second component that makes it what it is the ammunition. So you could make the argument by going to the Supreme Court, could make the argument that in order to have a well-maintained firearm as an individual, you have to be able to have access, unrestricted, unfettered access to the thing that makes it function, is the ammunition. But that case hasn't been brought yet.
Well, see,
And I think if
go ahead.
go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I want to stop it before it gets there, because at its face, and I ask every progressive, I ask every Democrat, I ask anyone who is against the Second Amendment to give me the counter argument. I believe on its face, a bill that says, okay, legislation, a tax on the ammunition does not make people inherently safer. It does not protect people. It does not prevent crime. It is only a punishment for those that own firearms. And by the fact that it is an additional tax, it disproportionately affects women, the poor, and people of color. So on those bases alone, it is ineffective and it is disproportionately punishing people. This never should see the light of day, let alone have ever been suggested. It doesn't need to get to the Supreme Court. It should never exist. Am I wrong?
No, and that's correct. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that people, as you were pointing out earlier, about the way our Constitution works, it is the only governing document in the world that doesn't give things. It actually says, hey, it's a document of limitation. It basically is, you have access to everything. We're just going to limit government.
Right.
But then using that same framework, government has been able to subvert the Constitution because people have become lackadaisical in their approach to politics. They don't incorporate it as a day-to-day part of our culture anymore, and stay active in it. They have allowed government, people, the citizenry, have allowed government to be able to use that framework and limit the people. Every time you make a law, it's a limit on what you're allowed to do.
Yeah.
Before the Constitution, it was, you are allowed to do this because we say you're allowed to do it. You are allowed to have that because we say that you are allowed to have it. America was the great experiment where it was like, we can't tell you what to do.
Ideally,
ideally, you have all this access to freedom, and you have the ability to self-determinate, and you have the ability to. You're born with all of this at your fingertips. Go ahead, go about your day, do what you got to do, and the government was supposed to operate under a controlled set of circumstances in order to perform certain duties that individuals themselves would not be able to do.
well,
Such as deal with foreign powers, keep and maintain a standing army, things that most other nations, the government was there to do besides rule over the populace. Right?
but see, that's where I think the problem is. I'm sorry. So go ahead.
So I think the biggest thing is, as you were saying about localities and the Constitution, is one of the things that we can do as individuals is, so if the state decides that they're going to put an excise tax on ammunition, for the sake of argument, you could make it so that the local legislation of your county does not enforce that tax.
Yes.
The problem is though, is that if you do that, that doesn't come without some sort of punishment from the state. So the state could say, well, all right, you're not going to go ahead and force this excise tax on the ammunition. Well, that's fine, but then you don't get any of the infrastructure money. You don't get any of the education money. You don't get any of the public funding or public works. If you need a new bridge, that was previously government funded and maintained, it got lost in translation. You don't have that.
Well, yes.
There are consequences to doing that. Nothing that can't be surmounted locally, but people have to be willing to act on it. It's like I was talking with somebody the other day about taxes in general, like property tax. and they were saying how, well, if you live in a particular area, you got to pay that property tax because how is anything going to get built? And I said, well, how did how do you get a road in a town that doesn't have any government funding? The people build it, right?
That's how we got schools in the United States. Benjamin Franklin paid for them.
Right. I mean, if people would just realize that taxation, all it does is it takes the wealth of the individual and it puts it into a sort of general fund, simplified, very oversimplified, but it takes it from the individual, it puts it into a general fund with the intention of being used for a specific project. That's not a bad idea inherently, but people can do that on their own, and they can do it more efficiently.
And we usually do. And we usually do.
Yeah.
In America, we do. Go ahead.
If you remember, there was that whole battle with Trump and the wall, right? When they were trying to get the funding approved for the wall.
Yeah.
And somebody started a GoFundMe or a Kickstarter or something like that. It was one of these crowdfunding websites. They said, look, our government is not approving the legislation needed to provide the funding for this wall. If you want it, contribute. They raised something like $15 million.
I actually interviewed them. I actually interviewed one of those, one of the organizations that was doing that. I did. And I know, and they built it, and they did build sections of the wall. Mm-hmm.
Right, and that's the thing is that's with us paying taxes. Now imagine if you approached everybody in the country and you said, "Hey, we have this problem. We need money to get the resources necessary in order to facilitate a solution for this problem." If we weren't paying taxes, but we were approached on every single approach and asked, "Would you be able to contribute?" I can guarantee you that there would be enough people, if they had a surplus of money, would be able to pay for these things faster and and solve the problem faster than government. And we have the technology to do that. That's the beauty of social media. That's the beauty of being able to have on-demand information right at your fingertips. But we're not being utilized that way, and instead it's being throttled.
Well, I'll give. Let me say. The problem is that we are being told what to think. And that's the problem. We're not being empowered. I'll give an example, and I'll show it on the screen right now. As an example, Kitani Brown, Judge Jackson, is nominated for the Supreme Court. And we have, as I'm showing on the screen right now, Congress member of Washington State's 7th District, Jayapal, is saying that we need to confirm her and expand the Supreme Court. Now, those are two big different problems. One, I don't believe Judge Jackson is the most qualified person for that position. And our problem is she was selected because she is black, a woman, an activist, and under 55. None of those things have anything to do with her qualifications. And I'm not saying she's not qualified. I'm saying she's not the most qualified. There are at least 5 other women who are black women and Democrats and judges with greater experience than Judge Jackson, but they're over 55. So they're all being evaluated not on their qualifications. They're being judged on their political expediency. So right. And so we're looking at them being put in because they're less qualified. And that's a problem for the Supreme Court, to put in anyone who's less qualified. And then she mentions again that she wants to expand the court, which makes it political. This is for political expediency. And that's being looked at as a positive. It has 16,200 likes, 2,667 retweets of people.
Question,
Go ahead.
Does she, by expanding the court, is she talking about expanding the number of justices or expanding the influence?
Both. She wants to expand the influence. That's what the activist judges are for. and she wants to increase the number of Supreme Court justices, which the American people and every poll have come out and said, no, they don't want to see that happen, and they see that as being political. Every poll, left, right, and center, have all come to that determination. But she has 16,000 people that are backing her up. Notice, and I have this on screen right now, she hasn't said why Jackson should be put in. And the only answers we've gotten from Schumer, from Pelosi, from the Biden administration is that she's black and a woman and an activist, and she's under 55. That's the only reasons we are being told why she should be nominated. And how can we say yes to that?
So essentially, she would be open to legislating from the bench then, based on
She already has.
based on just what you have there.
In the last 9 months, when she's only been an appellate judge since for 9 months now. And in that time, just 9 months, she's had 3 cases that were overturned because she was an activist and she overreached her power and made judgments that she had no legal right to do so. Which to me, and you can tell me if you think I'm wrong, but because of that, I would say she is disqualified. She is an activist to the extent to violate her actual position. She is taking more power than she has a right to. That's a problem with an activist, and therefore she does not deserve to be there. Maybe in the future, after she learns how to restrain herself, maybe. But today, she is not the most qualified. Not one Democrat will address that. I have searched, I have looked for it, I have asked people like Representative Antonio Delgado of the New York 19th District. I've asked appointed Governor Kathy Hochul. I've put out these questions, and they will not respond to this. I think that is a disqualifying problem. Meanwhile, we have the chairwoman of the Progressive Caucus is saying, ignore all that, do it anyway. You don't need to think about it. Don't ask questions about her qualifications. Don't ask what she's done. Just say yes and do what I want. And I think that's dangerous, and that's the problem from social media. And it's probably also why I've been blocked on YouTube, why we're getting attacked on Facebook and other social media, I believe. Maybe I'm wrong.
To his credit, Akshar at least responds. The last couple of times that I've gone through the website and used the Senate dashboard to voice my opposition or support of different bills in this, I've always received feedback. And sometimes it looks like a form letter, but the last 2 times he's actually responded in person. Now, how much of it is actual lip service, where he's just saying, "Oh, well, yeah, I really disagree," and then when it comes down to the actual vote, he doesn't vote that way.
At least having some kind of response is better than, right. If we're talking, and I always say on this program, we should elect effective people. I never say Republican, Democrat, Libertarian. I'm not. That's your choice as an individual. But I always ask, make sure whoever you're getting in is effective. Now, do we have someone with State Senator Fred Akshar, who I've known for many years, and I was speaking to him, in fact, yesterday at an NRA event, and we were speaking. Is he effective? Well, he's answering people. Is that effective? Maybe, but I can tell you what, it's more effective than for the last 6 months in a row I have been trying to reach out to, and this is why I keep mentioning it, New York Representative Antonio Delgado, and for 6 months, he refuses to respond. For the last 2 months, I've been reaching out to Joshua Riley, who's trying to run for the New York 22nd, the new New York 22nd District, Syracuse.
Right, Syracuse District, yeah.
And he refuses to answer any question. How can you be effective if you won't speak to the very people you want to be elected by?
Right.
And that's true no matter where you are. I mean, I'm using New York examples, but looking around the nation, why are we re-electing people like that? Go ahead.
Yeah, I would say that if you want to be involved and you want to start small, I only started using the New York State Senate dashboard probably a year ago, just before the midterms. And I would say that start small. Like it does seem overwhelming to get into the arena and feel your way through it. Now I've been doing politics since before college. Like I remember being active with
don't give away your age.
being active with the Clinton Perot and was it Clinton Perot and Bush?
Yeah.
During that period, I remember, and I was just younger. My dad would laugh whenever I talked about how if I had the ability to vote, I would vote for Ross Perot. I remember my dad being like, "You're not old enough to think about stuff like that. Just go sit in a corner and be quiet. You don't know what you're talking about." But even then, I could see, like, through the previous years, I saw a lot of our economy going down because a lot of people were shipping money out to China. And I couldn't understand, even at that age. I was like, why is all our manufacturing suddenly leaving the country to go elsewhere? And nobody had an answer for me. At least maybe they didn't have an answer because they didn't think I'd understand that the only place that you can really make any sort of profit is on labor. Yeah, I understood that. Like you have a fixed cost for your resources in the most part. You have a fixed cost for your utilities and overhead for the most part. And it's labor where you can get to negotiate down the price of the product. So I understood that, but what I didn't understand is why it was so important when there were certain parts of our national manufacturing that were critical to our national security that would be put overseas. A couple years later, there was the closing of the last lead refinery in the United States. All the lead that goes into our ammunition is now manufactured in China.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. You mean we're fighting with Chinese-made ammunition?
Well, that's
no one learn?
Well,
Did no one learn what happens when somebody, a foreign power makes your ammunition and all of a sudden you have to go to war with them?
No, people don't realize that. And Dow, and I think everyone should understand, and maybe this makes it make more sense to people. And two, when under the Obama administration, Obama-Biden, we significantly switched the nation into a service economy from a manufacturing economy.
I remember that.
And that means...
I remember him saying that.
Right. And no one thought about that because we have people like the chairwoman from the Progressive Caucus saying, this is good for America. This will be fantastic. Except here's the reality. If we have a problem like we do right now, where we have China snubbing Joe Biden, and he's saying, oh, well, I'm going to put a tax on you. We're going to put sanctions on you if you help Russia. Who does that hurt? The United States, because our goods are coming from China. Walmart is China exports, and we are going to hurt ourselves. That is going because we don't make the stuff anymore. And everything is being exported, which requires one, oil to get those ships over to the United States, more oil and gas to get it transported from our ports to our stores. And it has to be made in the first place. So we are actually saying we're going to hurt ourselves because we don't make stuff anymore. This is the consequence because no one ever stopped to ask Obama or any of the progressive Democrats to say, wait a minute, what happens if they're angry with us? And that's something that people, and see, that's why we need to ask. And that's why I think you make a great point. Start small, and people can go and target this bill, 9563, and say, hey, don't do this. It's not effective. And at the end of the day, it does nothing for us. And if we did that to Obama today, we wouldn't be looking at 8%, the highest rate of inflation increases that we have ever seen in the last 40 years, that we're going to get to what I believe 15% official inflation, which means 35% inflation for the average person going into the store. And we're going to have our economy crash as we get substandard Supreme Court justices like Judge Jackson. That's what I think.
And it boils down to a lot of different issues too. Like when you talk about things like the right to bear arms and the Second Amendment, this particularly with this tax. If they start with firearms, because firearms have been proven to be the most effective equalizer when it comes to they call it exponential.
It's a multiplier.
Force multiplier. Yeah,
it's a force multiplier. Mm-hmm.
All right, so you take that. All right, so we let it continue, and they effectively price out the ability to own a firearm. All right, well, people, if they feel threatened, they're going to find a way to defend themselves regardless. I think Agent Black would be a better person to confirm that.
For people who don't know, that's a friend of ours. He's a fan of the show from the United Kingdom. But go on, yes.
Mm-hmm. And I heard anecdotally, and I don't know if this is true or not, but you cannot find pointed butcher knives or kitchen knives in the UK now.
Yes, they've been banning knives. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because because of the knife effect.
Yes.
This is the issue. If you start with something that's a large force multiplier, but you still have people that want to defend themselves, they're going to go smaller. They're going to go more compact, and they're going to use whatever's available. So people can say what they want about the slippery slope argument, but what we've been seeing in the last 2 decades, that slippery slope arguments are not invalid just because they're presumed, they're premised on a trend. This is what I foresee could happen if the trend continues to do this. Yeah, you're making an assumption about the direction in which the argument could go, but the trend is based solidly on how your culture is defining itself in that moment and beyond. So if the trend of culture is like, well, we're moving away from a warlike culture, we're more civilized, and we're going to get rid of all implements of destruction, well, that's great, but who's left with a force multiplier when the government is the only one that has it?
Well, we've seen what happens in those scenarios. We can look at Cuba, we can look at North Korea, we can look at China, we can look at Venezuela. Venezuela being the most recent one. What happened when Venezuela...
Even Australia to a point.
Well,
Australia and New Zealand.
And New Zealand. But I want to say, because it's the most clear example is in Venezuela, a nation that was rich in oil, people were doing well, the government switched to a socialist government. They said they're going to protect everyone, so give us your guns because you won't need it anymore. And within 3 years of them doing that, it's a poor nation, people are starving, there are outbreaks of diseases, measles and mumps that no one's been having to deal with for decades, and the government itself, according to the New York Times, has committed over 5,000 acts of murder of its own citizens. That's what happens in every single case.
Right. So, I mean, the idea that people have become complacent enough to not realize that whenever the government makes a law, they're actually restricting the populace. The only way these laws have any effect at all is on the law abiding. Once you become branded a criminal, then all bets are off. And the people that are truly criminals, the ones that have been committing the crime that supposedly the bill was supposed to stop in the first place, being shown to be ineffective, well, we need to do more. Well, pretty soon, you're going to have a government presiding over a populace of criminals, some of whom are not criminals, except the legality of the restrictions that were placed upon it by the government.
I can tell you that in 2013, it's crazy, but real world example, 2013, I may or may not have become an overnight criminal because of a shotgun that I may or may not own because of the New York Safe Act. And millions of New York residents became criminals overnight because they own a firearm that the New York Safe Act now said was illegal, or they had a magazine that had more bullets than the New York Safe Act allowed. They didn't do anything, but they're now a criminal, and now the state can come and punish you because of that.
Yeah, even something as innocuous as like a small, for example, a small Winchester carbine, like from say 1970,
Mm-hmm.
right? Can hold about 15 rounds of ammunition in a tubular magazine, 15th round being in the chamber. That is, by definition of the Safe Act, the illegal firearm.
Yes.
If it were to be purchased today, it would be branded a criminal.
You couldn't purchase it today, not in New York State.
I'm sorry?
You can't buy that in New York State today.
No, you couldn't buy that in New York State because you would, it's illegal.
Yeah.
But the thing is, as you say, is if you already own that, well then, what do? I mean, you can't really use it. Even if you were, I wonder what would happen if you were trying to transport it. Say you were going to the gun range, right?
You can't.
And you didn't have a restrictor on the tubular magazine. Like I'm sure you could probably buy a rod that would have spring in it that would limit the amount to say the requirement of like 5 rounds or less or 7 rounds or less. But you didn't have that in there. It's just the original equipment. You were transporting that to a gun range. You had everything else correct. Like you had the gun separate from the ammunition. Everything was separated. You couldn't access it from the cab. Get to the gun as you're pulling into the gun range. You pull it out. And there happens to be a trooper there, and he looks at it and goes, "Oh, by the way, you're under arrest.
Yes.
Having an illegal firearm. We're seizing that firearm because it's civil asset forfeiture. But you may not actually be a criminal for possessing it, but the gun itself is committing a crime. That's what civil asset forfeiture. Your property is used for committing a crime or violating a law, and then they seize that and they take it away.
That's one interpretation of it. Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, now all of a sudden, something that was a family heirloom is gone. you have there's no recompense for that. Just don't have it anymore.
Yeah.
That's the ridiculousness of some of these laws, and I just think that having been active and tried to tell people, hey, this isn't right. Why are we allowing this? Oh, it's fine. People assume, the inactive people assume that somebody somewhere is going to put a stop to it.
Well, and I don't think that's it. I think it's that people are being told it's okay. We're having people like, again, I'm coming back to that example. You're having people like Jayapal, Congresswoman Jayapal, who's saying, no, it's all right. This is the right answer. We have people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. We're having candidates like Joshua Riley who are telling us, or even at the most local level, my local councilwoman, Angela Riley, they're saying, don't worry, it's okay. Now, I don't think that's correct, but people are trusting because they're elected. And supposedly, elected officials are supposed to be smarter and they're supposed to know what's right and wrong, and they're supposed to have the best opinion. Now, as someone who for 15 years who knows all of these politicians before and after they've been elected, I can tell you directly, they're just as dumb as your neighbor next door. They're no smarter than anyone else and very often less informed. That's a reality. But because the media says, no, well, that's the expert, you have to believe them and don't listen to small channels that actually do the homework, look at the laws, read the bills, and tell you about it. Well, we're the bad guys because we're telling you, they're not telling you the whole story. That's a problem.
Yeah. And I think that just besides the fact of not being told the whole story, there's also a relevance disconnect. Like I kind of liken it to being a history teacher. You walk into a history class, one of the first things that you tend to answer as far as a question is, why do we need to know this? It happened a while ago.
History
Why do we need to
repeats
know
itself.
this now? And you have to actually talk when the class is first starting out. You actually have to lay out for the students how history is not just about what happened, about how we got here.
Mhm.
That's the relevancy. It's like you start laying out, well, why do you think that you're not allowed to join the military before 18? Well, because we're not a legal adult. Well, who says that? There have been 15, 16, 17-year-olds in the revolutionary period. There were 12-year-olds fighting.
True.
Why is 18 the cutoff? Well, if you know the history about how people recognize development of maturity and so on and so forth, they realized that 18 was the cusp of being able to mentally decide things for yourselves, but you were still young enough to follow orders. you know,
Yeah.
So
Maturity and discipline. Yeah.
right. So I mean, you have to make it relevant, and I think that's what's missing in a lot of political discussions is that most people aren't being told all the information, so they don't understand why it's relevant to them, and so and they when the narrative is controlled like that, you get these people going out to vote, and they vote for whatever sounds good because they don't realize there's that disconnect that doesn't say, hey, you know what? If this person abuses their position,
Well,
and I put them in a position of authority over me just because, well, they sound good and I trust that, without actually thinking about it. That's where you get what we have today. And I'll tell you, I've talked to several of my neighbors, and they're all going to other places
well, yeah.
even now.
Yeah. And
Like, we see the writing on the wall. We see what's happening in the legislature here, and we're leaving.
yeah, but
Wish you guys could come with us.
But you can't.
I'm like,
You can't escape this, though. You can't it's not
Right.
something you escape by going from New York to Texas or Florida or Kansas or wherever. You can't escape that. I'll give you an example, and I want to hear your comment on this before I let you go. So this is from Euronews, okay? And this is, it was published on March 17th, 3 days ago. Global food prices already hit record high. Then Russia invaded the Ukraine. And here's the part of the article that I want people to focus on. In the short term, the challenge comes from increased input prices such as energy, fertilizer, and feed, and the impact of increasing food prices on society. In the medium term, we need a sustainable, productive, and resilient agriculture, building on the farm to fork and biodiversity strategies. Let me put this into regular English for people. See, it's not the history. It's not just history that we have to have a perspective on. We have to have a perspective on consequences, which almost no one is talking about. A consequence of what's happening right now. Actually, the Biden-Harris administration, since February, has been an increase in food. We know for a fact that it is one of the leading causes of inflation in the United States through 2021 and to this day. And we are looking at a consequence of not having a foreign policy, of having a leader that is being laughed at by Putin and ignored and denounced and refuted by Saudi Arabia and in China, and being used and abused by Iran, that the cost of energy and fertilizer and feed, which are coming from all of those areas I just mentioned, are going up. And that consequence, which we won't see until October, is going to devastate our economy and our lives. But no politician at this moment is standing up and saying, by the way, the consequence of what we have done and what we're allowing to happen right now is going to hurt every family, especially the poor in America.
Right.
Does that make sense? Or am I explaining it badly?
No, that makes sense. I mean, if you want to go even further, you can simplify it further by saying, look, if you know where your food comes from, then you know this is bad.
Yeah.
And that's the funny part. That's the other funny part. Haha, but tragic. That you get some people out there that are like, well, food is in the grocery store. Okay, where does the grocery store get it from? Well, they get it from distribution. Okay, where does trying to get them to walk back to the point where you realize that your food comes from farms. Your food comes from people producing the meat, the vegetables. I mean, regardless of what your diet is, you're getting your stuff from agriculture.
Yeah.
But there's I tell you, I was racking my brain trying to explain it to one of my relatives. Who was a younger niece, very leftist, very politically active, which good for her. I encourage that.
Yeah.
But I was trying to get her to understand what these inflation was actually going to do to people. I'm like, you realize that the price of avocados is not the only vegetable that's going to be impacted by all that. Right?
Well, people aren't.
You're going to be seeing like energy shortages that are going to affect the ability of farmers to run their equipment, which means that they're not going to be able to bring in a harvest. It means that if it lays fallow in the field, it's going to rot there.
Yeah, but the problem. I understand, and you're right. But the problem is, people they're relying on the news media to do its job, which is
Right.
to ask a question such as, what is the consequence? What's going to happen down the road? And to have politicians who are going to say, here's the consequences I see. This is the best outcome, so that the public can then decide based on those, because consequences are never just one thing, there's multiple, to make a decision and say, here's the choice I want to go towards. Let's go down the left path instead of the right path. And if we don't give people these options and they're waiting for it, because not everyone is like me, spending 15 hours a day reading all of the news media, they're saying, okay, give me the short version. I've got 15 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, whatever it may be, to get that answer. And our politicians are saying, there's only one answer. The moment a politician tells you there's only one answer to a problem, that's the wrong answer, in my opinion.
Right.
Because there's always more than one answer.
Sense. Right. Well, the answer to food instability would be, take the opportunity, if you haven't already, to go out and either learn the skill of growing your own, or if you don't have the opportunity for that, picking up a few extra shifts and trying to get whatever's available now, because the price of that is going to go astronomical and above what has already risen, and stock your pantry.
No, that's
there are ways and means of doing so. It's just the problem is that one of the other problems is that people are creatures of convenience.
Yeah.
You know, we've had so much, and we've had access to so much for so long, that as a people, we've never struggled en masse with hunger. Not since the Great Depression.
I know, but
And most people alive don't even remember stories of their grandparents and stuff like that about Great Depression.
Well,
I do.
I agree with
I had
you.
it hammered into me since I was a kid.
I understand, but Dal, we're a little bit older. I happen to be 54. I know you're younger than me.
Oh, yeah.
But you're not seeing that, and that's one of the problems. And again, it's people not asking the consequences, not thinking about the consequences, assuming that our major media and our politicians that are elected are looking out for us, and they're going to do the right thing. And if they're not mentioning it, it must not be important. And that is not true. We have been saying on this channel for more than a year now, watch out, food, the economy. We have literally been saying this. Not everyone follows it, but we've been saying it. We've been right so far. I would like to be wrong, but we've been warning people, and we're saying it again. Because if I'm wrong, You'll have more food. You'll have more money in the bank. You lose nothing. If I'm right, if this channel is correct in what we've been predicting, then you're going to be prepared. It's a win-win. Guess what? There's more than one solution to this, and you win in either of these solutions to this probable consequence. But let me do this. Now, I want to give people a chance to call in case they want to, if they want to make some other comments.
No, I said my piece, but I just thought I just wanted to encourage people before I go. I want to encourage people, even if it's as simple as you don't even have to leave your house to start. Just go to the computer. Go to. Let me read the address. I can post it in the comments.
Definitely post it in the comments.
It's nysenate.gov. Go there. You set up an account, and you just put in your name, your address, and everything, so they can verify your residency or what have you. You can have a front row seat on legislation that comes into existence, and the Senate side, what it does is it shows you the bills that are being put in by the Assembly and by the Senate, so you're able to follow legislation as it goes through the process. Start there, and just stay in contact with your local representatives. Think about those questions about the consequences and what's going to happen to you. It can be scary sometimes, which is why a program like No Soundbites Allowed is fantastic, because then you don't feel isolated. Then you can take that worry, you can put it out there, you can discuss it, you can hash out a plan for yourself, then act on it. By doing that, you actually avert a lot of the panic that will come when suddenly people wake up one day, they can't leave their home. They're not allowed to go to the gas station to get gas because they don't have a passport. Or they're not allowed to go into the grocery store to get food because the food isn't there and it's not your day on your ration card. Stuff like that appears all of a sudden, people panic. You're able to track of this stuff, think about where it's going, get involved, and learn a skill, and then act on it. That's the best hedge against any kind of instability that you're going to find.
Yeah. I agree completely. And I thank you for calling in, Dal, and letting your voice be heard with your ideas. I think it's important. And definitely put that link in the description.
Should be calling in. Everybody should call in at least once.
Absolutely.
Even the detractors, even people that don't agree. You could say that that guy, he's so full of crap. All right, well, like you say, tell me why. I can tell you that through my life experience, that's what I draw from. And that's what I've been seeing, and that's what I've been living. But that's all I know. If you have more information to give, by all means, call in. Let's discuss it. Because without being able to see as a people where we're going, we're just going to languish and pass on.
Yeah.
All right. Have a good one.
All right. Thank you. So, folks, just like you've seen with Dow, you too can call into the program 607-242-1582. The phone lines are open from anywhere in the world to be able to comment. You can reach us on Facebook, as you see. As I took it off the screen for a second, I apologize. Like Tina, you can reach us on Facebook, or like Dal and Jason, you can reach us on DLive. You can reach us on Twitter. We are open to hear what you have to say, whether you agree or disagree. Let's have that conversation, because none of these issues we're talking about get resolved if no one's talking about it. And that's one of the things, again, that I believe the social media, the internet overlords, many people of certain political ideologies don't want you to do. They don't want you to think for yourself. They want you to obey. They want you to listen. Dow made a great point, and I'm looking forward to him putting up the link in the conversation. Follow this yourself. Pick whatever it is you think is important to you. You want to have chickens in your yard? Find out. Follow what New York State or York State is saying about that. And for people overseas, see what the EU is doing. See what your local community is doing. And follow it. If it's I don't know, gun rights, or it's the right to vote, feminist values, gay, LGBTQ plus, whatever the issue is for you, follow it, be involved. Because if you're not, you may not like the answer that those handful of elites decide for you and tell you that you have to do whether you like it or not. Like in Australia, people being pulled, literally pulled out of their homes to be taken to a camp because the government said, well, we're doing this for you because it's the best thing for you. Say bye to your house. Come on, you're going over to the camp. You don't have a choice. New Zealand, same thing. And you're saying, well, that won't happen again. Why not? If you didn't speak up the first time, if you're not talking about it, then why wouldn't they do it again? New York State we lost 34,000 doctors and nurses. Similar numbers were lost in California, in Illinois, in Maryland, in Washington State, because the governors of these states, Governor Whitmer, Governor Newsom, both governors, Andrew Cuomo and Kathy Hochul, they just got rid of people because they didn't agree with them politically. Not because of the science, because of their politics. And you now suffer because there aren't enough doctors to take care of you. There aren't enough nurses to take care of you. There's not enough people in the nursing homes to help take care of you. You suffer because they made a decision that was political, and it's going to negatively impact your life. And let me jump to something similar, but not exactly the same, talking about the Supreme Court, which I'm very vehemently interested. And it doesn't matter if you say, well, the Supreme Court has too many conservatives right now, because guess what? We had too many liberals before. There's always someone who's going to say, there's too much of whatever. I don't care about that part. I want the most qualified people, whether they're conservative or liberal. Yes, I prefer conservatives, but I want them qualified. And I want them to be the best person possible. Now, Monday, you're going to start hearing about Judge Jackson, because she's going to be up and they're going to start the process. She's going to start getting interviewed. And one of the things people are going to focus on is the fact that she said in a ruling, the primary takeaway from the past 250 years of recorded American history is that presidents are not kings. That's not it. That's not activism. That's not something that anyone, it may be something people are going to take because it's political, and she's making a political statement as a judge. But the big thing that really should be focused isn't this, because this is what the Washington Post wants you to focus on. And the average person reading the Washington Post is going to read this and go, well, that's not a really terrible thing to say. It's true. Presidents aren't kings, although we see them acting like it. Look at the Biden administration. Look at the Obama administration. But separate of that, even if you don't think those are bad examples, here's the thing. That's not why she's considered an activist. Judge Jackson is considered an activist because when she got on to the appellate court, 3 times she overreached her power. She took cases she should never have. She made judgments she never had the right to do it because of politics, because she didn't like Trump. And you don't have to like Trump, but that doesn't make it illegal. She did, or at least she tried to, and then she was overturned. Do you really want someone who is willing to abuse this power that she has and our legal system to do something? And I know some people will say, well, today, she's on my side. Judge Jackson is black and a woman, and she's under 55, so she's who I want to see in there. Fantastic. You're going to tell me that she's a progressive, so you want her in there. And what happens when that progressive ideology turns against you? Kind of like it did with Dade Rubin. Like it's done with how many activists that we have seen? How many times? J.K. Rowling. She was beloved. up until she said something that was not approved by the very same progressives that were lauding her. And then all of a sudden, they turned on her. What happens when that happens to you? You're not a billionaire like J.K. Rowling. You're not powerful like some of these other celebrities, like a Bill Maher. What happens when it's your turn and they turn on you? Because this activist decided that today, well, black women, they're a priority. And tomorrow, trans women are a priority. The day after that, fat people are a priority. Then skinny people. Then every other, whatever it may be, it doesn't really matter. When that ideology changes and a different group becomes politically important, what happens when they turn on you? Do you really want that judge that is more concerned about the current political fad than your actual power, about your rights? I mean, you could say, yeah, Dow makes a good point. Joe Rogan, Russell Brand, I mean, especially Russell Brand, who I do follow. He's one of many people that I follow on the left. They're more center left leaning. And Russell Brand is in no way, shape, or form a conservative. Neither is Tim Pool. Neither is Joe Rogan. They're not. And yet, they are today being labeled as such so that people can abuse them and try to silence them because they're not saying what's approved. What happens when it's your turn? What happens when Justice Jackson decides that, oh, now you said something you shouldn't have said. You said something that isn't approved. You get punished. Do you really want someone who's an activist? Or do you want someone who actually, even for a liberal, says, I have a belief and it makes sense. And it's the right thing. And the Constitution guarantees it. I'd rather have, if I have to have someone who's left-leaning, I want someone who's left-leaning because the Constitution says that's the right answer. Not because Nancy Pelosi or Ilhan Omar or Jay Paul or any of these other progressives, these democratic socialists, say, well, that's the answer. By the way, these are all people. Ilhan Omar, Representative Jay Paul, AOC, they're all telling you that they want to transform America, that they want to destroy the system that exists now and put in a brand new system. They don't want the Constitution. They don't want you to have the rights by birth that exist right now. They want to give you rights so that they can take them away. Do you think I'm misunderstanding it? Look at the description of Congresswoman Jayapal on Twitter. And she is a lifelong organizer for immigrants, civil and human rights. Human rights, civil rights. Do you know where those come from? They come from political organizations, not from birth, not from God, not because you have those rights inherently. Those are rights given to you. And if the government gives it to you, the government can take it away from you. Just ask the people in Canada. Ask any trucker in Canada. Ask anyone who's been pulled into a camp, a medical camp in Australia or New Zealand. Ask the people in Venezuela, Cuba, North Korea, China. Ask the Uyghurs, the religious group that is being persecuted in China. Those rights can be taken away from you in a heartbeat. Ask Russell Brand, who is left-leaning in his ideology, and he is now being labeled as a right-wing extremist. What? Bill Maher is being called a right-wing extremist. Are you kidding me? Have you heard? Bill Maher was the same guy who said he wanted to have a recession in the United States because it'll win an election. Bill Maher was the guy who was screaming that we had to get rid of Orange Man bad. And it was, even if Joe Biden had committed sexual assault, it was more important to get rid of Orange Man Bad and his tweets than have Joe Biden. And now he's seen the light of day. Trevor Noah on the Comedy Central is now pointing out the fact that it is absolutely terrible for the United States that Saudi Arabia and these other nations are laughing at Joe Biden and not taking his call. They are ignoring him. That is not a benefit for you. And do you want someone who is just like Trevor Noah, someone who is just like Bill Maher, who are going to turn around at any given moment and say, hey, well, you're not progressive enough. And you want that person on the Supreme Court? Because you can then say, but she's black. So what? Why is that important? I always like, I hear this from people all the time. Well, she's black. And she's a woman. And what does that mean? Really, what does that mean? Why is that important? How does that affect whether or not you can drive? Do you stop at a red light or not? That's law. It has nothing to do with whether you're black or white, male or female, gay or straight. None of that matters. The law is the law. How does that change based on your sex, your skin color, your sexual preference? Please tell me how that changes. If the Constitution says you have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and it does, that is the happiness clause, how does that change because of your sexual persuasion, your color of skin, your gender? How does that change it? It doesn't. You still have the right by birth to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Except progressives want to tell you that's not your inherent right. You have human rights, not birth rights. And that's a problem. And anyone who wants to be on the Supreme Court that believes you should have only human rights and not the rights inherent by birth, they want to restrict your freedom, and that will come back and bite you in the ass. It absolutely will. And you can't trust the media. You can't trust the media on these things. You really can't. Let me explain why you can't trust the news media. And this is why I got in trouble last week. This is why we were shut down last week, because we were quoting the news media. This is NBC News, okay? NBC News published on March 17th, 3 days ago. This man, James Hill, was the second American to die in the Ukraine. Now, unlike many people in the Ukraine right now, the 20 to 30,000 Americans in the Ukraine that couldn't get out of the country because Joe Biden abandoned them and said, get out however you can, James Hill wanted to stay in the Ukraine. Fair enough. He took on a risk. And we saw the news media 3 days ago was reporting James Hill, his sister, Cheryl Hill Gordon, said, my brother Jimmy Hill was killed yesterday in the Ukraine. He was waiting in a bread line with several other people when they were gunned down by Russian military snipers. His body was found in the street by local police. This is the report 3 days ago. And you would rightly be outraged if that is the only news you heard about this. That snipers, Russian snipers, killed an American citizen trying to get bread. The thing is, that's not true. That quote from NBC News is absolutely not true. It's not real. It was meant to get your emotions up so that you would blindly follow the Biden-Harris administration and demand that they take action. It's not true. You say to Mike, how can you know it's not true? Fantastic. I will show you how I know this is not true and why you should not blindly accept what the news media tells you. This is from USA Today. American man killed in Ukraine was searching for food for sick partner. This is March 18th, one day after NBC News. An American man killed in Russia in a Russian attack in northern Ukraine was trying to find food for a sick partner, according to his family members. Okay, sounds kind of the same. And I want to get to the art. There, come on. Where is it? He's the second citizen to be killed. My brother was a helper trying to help and find people. He was trying to find food for himself and other patients in a hospital. Okay. And now we find this article, which was on March 19th. March 19th, yesterday, from The Guardian. American killed in Ukraine refuses to postpone trip to help sick partner. It, quote, it was initially reported that Hill was shot while waiting in a bread line, but his sister said the family had received new details through senators and from friends in Ukraine. Katya said James Hill, and a friend went to an area where they heard buses were waiting to be evacuated, to evacuate people via a safe corridor. He was trying to leave. There were more than 1,000 people in the line, and he told the friend he would go back to the hospital, not to get food, to go back to the hospital. He decided not to evacuate. The friend told Katya Russian shelling began. The area got shelled, not snipers. And that seems to have killed him. Now, this is a sad story, and this is upsetting, absolutely. But it's the media using your emotions to promote a political agenda. They came out with a story that they did not research, that they were not sure of. NBC was racing out there to get you this emotional moment to make you be angry. And didn't really bother to mention they got it wrong. That it isn't true. That he wasn't on a bread line. He wasn't searching for food. He was trying to evacuate. Something that we had hoped he would have done beforehand, but like 20,000 other Americans, he wasn't able to. He chose not to get out of that nation. Many other people can't get out of that nation, and the Biden administration has no desire to save him. Let me ask you a question. Do you think Putin would have the same absolute disregard and lack of care if he knew that Joe Biden had said, if you attack American citizens, even by accident, the United States will have to act? Do you think he would have the same disregard? But it wouldn't have the same impact now, would it? You'd have a different reaction. Just like if I told you that this American who decided to stay in Russia, in the Ukraine, that he decided to stay there and that he was trying to evacuate, and in that attempt to evacuate, he got bombed. That's not the same feeling you have when I told you initially he was searching for food and was in a bread line and he got shot by snipers. It's because they're trying to manipulate you. And mind you, I'm not saying that Russia's good. I'm not saying that they were the good guys in this conflict. But I am telling you that you are being misled on many levels. You're being misled about the problems for the United States economy and how it's going to affect the economy and how it's going to affect you eating and having food on the table for your family. I'm telling you that the media is misleading you in the information they are feeding to you to get your emotions up. That they are trying to guide you while you are distracted with this emotional moment, which Russia, Ukraine is emotional, and they are trying to change your opinion of it for a political agenda, like slipping through a Supreme Court justice nominee where they shouldn't, like picking a fight with China even though they're not willing to defend Taiwan. And maybe you disagree. Maybe you say, Mike, that's not how I see it. Fantastic. We should have that conversation. We should have a discussion about this and not take it on blind faith. I've never expected my audience, you, to accept anything I say on blind faith. And I am happy to hear when you guys say, well, Mike, I don't agree. Fantastic. Why? Not just that I feel like you're wrong. Why am I wrong? What about my conclusion is wrong? Where is the evidence that would lead us to believe something else? Because if we are blind faith following the major media, we're blind faith following these politicians, we will find, as we continuously do, they get it wrong. NBC got it wrong 3 days ago. New York Times got it wrong in October of 2020. Both of them got it wrong because they wanted to manipulate you. And because I'm calling them out on this, like when I called out CBS and Forbes for manipulating the data that they were providing to you, the conclusion of the data that they provided to you, that's why we got struck by YouTube. It's not going to stop us from speaking, but they want to silence you. They don't want you to think. Because you might not have the same emotional reaction that they want that gives them power. That's why NBC came out with the first story, which is emphatically and factually incorrect. Wasn't a breadline. He wasn't searching for food. He didn't get killed by snipers. Not true. Why did they tell you that? Because it emotionally manipulates you and gets you to do what they want politically. What other answer is there? Because they didn't need to rush and get that answer out. They didn't need to rush forward and tell you the wrong information. They could have waited, like The Guardian, wait 3 days and get the correct information. They could have, but they were busy trying to push a narrative to make Joe Biden look strong, to make Russia look evil, to justify the fact that they're going to be increasing the cost of your food, the cost of energy you use, and making the American dollar worth less than when they started. You don't have to agree with me 100%. You can tell me you think part of what I'm saying is wrong. Fantastic. Call in 607-242-1582. Tell me how I'm misunderstanding it. Because they're trying to slip a lot of things past you right now while you're distracted, while they're getting your emotions riled up and everyone's running around screaming about Russia. And I'm not saying that's wrong, but while you're busy hating on Russia, they are walking through and trying to get bills passed like the one in New York State to tax your bullets, which makes you less safe and have less freedom. And that is disproportionately going to affect women, the poor, and people of color. That is a fact. But you're busy being angry at Russia. What about what's happening here? They're not telling you that you should be preparing, not in a panic, not to run out in a panic and just buy toilet paper, but how about the next time you go out shopping, get 10% more food. Yes, it's going to be very expensive. It's going to cost you a lot of money. But you know what? You have 10% more canned foods. Because just maybe by October, the cost is going to go up another 20, 30, maybe 50%, depending on what you buy. And it's going to be harder to get because there's going to be less supply. And if you start stocking up today in October, you're not going to be that worried about it. How does that hurt you to tell you that? Because if I'm wrong, you've got extra food. You're going to eat the food. And if I'm right, you're not going to starve. Which one seems like a better plan to you? Trust the politicians that it's going to be all right. Don't worry. Don't even think about food. That's not on the table. Don't even discuss that. It's not worth talking about. Is that the better answer? Or is the better answer saying, take some preparation? Just in case. Prepare yourself. Just in case. Take some preventative actions to protect yourself and your family. Just in case. Which one seems like the better choice for you? Because I can tell you the one that the media is telling you. They're telling you, obey, don't think about it, don't talk about it, don't even do anything about it. Because they're going to take care of you eventually, maybe, if you're the right political ideology. Which to me is insulting and upsetting. Not everyone may agree. And God knows they're trying to shut this channel down because I don't agree. And I'm willing to say it publicly. Because I'm a black, Hispanic, conservative Republican, and that is not approved. That is not allowed. How dare you do that? There must be something wrong with me because I'm a black Republican. I'm an American. I'm supposed to have the right to choose whatever I want to choose as an intelligent individual to make decisions for myself. But they've already made the decision that I have to approve of what they do. I have to go in line. I have to accept that Judge Jackson is qualified and the best choice when she is demonstrably, factually not. They want you to believe Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez when she went on 60 Minutes and told you the facts don't matter. Being grammatically, being semantically, grammatically, and factually correct is not important. Their feelings are important. That's the only truth that you have to follow. And that's not the truth. That's never been the truth. Just as it's never been the truth in America that we cannot question the news media or our elected officials. We can, we should, and it is an integral part of the United States government. And it was always meant for us to challenge them because otherwise they don't stay honest. And it doesn't matter if you want to be a Republican or a Democrat, doesn't change anything. You don't have to be a Republican to want to protect yourself. That's the case. I'm just looking at some of the notes here in the comments, and I'm looking at Twitter as well. I don't know, folks. It upsets me. It upsets me so much. Not that they're attacking me, because they've been attacking me for 15 years. It's because they're attacking you. Because they're not trying to silence me because of what I said. They're trying to silence me because you listened. Not that you agreed. Remember, this isn't about whether you agree with me or not. This is about the fact that you actually heard what I had to say. That you heard a different voice that wasn't the voice coming from NBC or CNN or from the Biden-Harris administration or from the progressives like AOC and Jayapal. It's because I gave you a different point of view, a different conclusion than the one they have already made, and that the one that they have decided for you that you're supposed to follow blindly without question. That's what they're upset about. They're upset about the fact that I have asked questions of congressional members and candidates like Josh Riley, like Antonio Delgado, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Chuck Schumer, like Kirsten Gillibrand and Nancy Pelosi, that I have challenged them, that I have asked them questions. How dare I? That's why Antonio Delgado will not answer a question that I have asked him. You know, I asked Antonio Delgado a very interesting question the other day. And I want you to see what I had asked him. And I'm going to pull it up for you. Because I want to hear what you have to say about this. Where is it? Shows right there. Hang on. Here it goes. So, again, on March 6th, Disney attacked us. We defeated that challenge. On March 8th, Showtime attacked us. we defeated that challenge. March 18th, YouTube struck us down for quoting CBS and Forbes. And I asked Representative Antonio Delgado on March 18th, and I said, quote, will you stand for my free speech rights even if you disagree with my politics? What if I was BLM? What if I was in the LGBTQ? What's the difference? Why isn't Representative Delgado even responding to this comment? He doesn't have to agree with me. He could tell me, Mike, I just don't like your politics. I'm not going to stand by you. He could say, I don't think that was a violation of your free speech. He could say, well, YouTube can make whatever decisions it wants. He can come up with a lot of answers. And instead, he won't address the issue at all. Because 2022 is an election year. And Representative Delgado doesn't want anyone to hear anything that might make you question. Instead, he wants to run around and say, life is great. Things are fantastic. Let's look at what Delgado is doing. Let me show you what he is trying to promote right now. Have you subscribed to his newsletter? Don't worry, he's not going to answer, but he wants you to subscribe to his newsletter that tells you how great he is. Don't ask questions. Just understand he's great and doing a great job. No questions. Don't you dare ask a question. How about this? Hey, he has mobile hours because he's a great guy and he's working really hard. Don't ask him what he's working hard on. Don't ask him if he's working hard for you. Just accept he's doing a great job. He's working hard. Re-elect him. Don't ask questions. Okay. Here's his comment from 6 hours ago. At more than 2 million strong, women veterans make up the fastest growing group of the veteran population. During Women's History Month, we celebrate the contributions generations of women have made to our armed forces since our country's founding. How many of those women were abandoned in Afghanistan? How many of those women have been abandoned by the Biden-Harris administration in the Ukraine? How many of those women are going to be punished for owning a firearm? Because many veterans do own firearms, and they're now going to be taxed if New York State can pass this bill for no reason. That's not going to resolve crime. They're just being punished for owning a firearm. How many? But don't ask him a question. Excuse me. Don't ask Antonio Delgado a question because he's not going to give you an answer. He's not trying to answer anything. Glad to be with the Ulster County Executive, Senator Hinchy, and members of the local veteran community today to show up at our support for Hudson Valley veterans and help ensure high-quality veteran VA health care services remain accessible for those who rely on the Castle Point VA MC. Well, we've been asking him for many months now. One of the reasons that many vets right now are troubled is because of the way we left Afghanistan and the fact that we left thousands of Americans behind, and people are upset today because we've left thousands of Americans in Afghanistan. Why won't he answer that question? Why won't he not address that subject? But don't worry, he's doing a great job. He's working really hard on something. He's not telling you what it is. He's not really trying to help you. He doesn't care, and he's not going to answer your question. Because I'm asking about free speech. Isn't that important? Doesn't that affect every single American in every single way? Because if you're not protecting my free speech, I can't ask a question of Antonio Delgado about anything, even if he thinks I'm wrong, even if you think I'm wrong. If he's not willing to stand up for your free speech, he's not standing up for my free speech, you will never be able to ask him a question, and you will never get your issue dealt with. It's that simple. He can't answer a simple question, will you stand up for my free speech rights? Even if he thinks I'm wrong. Even if he thinks my rights haven't been affected, then tell me that. Tell me why he thinks that. But by saying nothing, he means that my rights, my freedom, means nothing. And if my rights mean nothing, a vocal person who knows all these politicians, who is active in politics, if someone who is active and outspoken and public, if I don't matter, how about the silent person who's watching this video right now, that he doesn't know your name, he's never seen you, he's never received a piece of mail from you, he's never gotten a question from you? Do you think he cares about your opinion? Do you think he's looking out for you? Someone that is meaningless to him because you've never appeared before him? Because you've never asked him a question? If he doesn't care about the people who are asking the questions, how much does he care about the people who don't ask questions? Do you really think he's looking out for you? Or do you think he's trying to get reelected because it's good for him? It's good for his political party. It's good for his political ideology. And if Congressman Antonio Delgado thinks that I am being unfair, if I am mischaracterizing him, if he thinks that I am misrepresenting his position, as I have said for at least 7 months now, you are free to come onto this program at any time. I will give him as much time as he needs to answer any and all questions however he wishes. I will not edit a single word, as I have never done in any interview. And he can explain why I've got it wrong. And I will publish every single word of it. I'll do it live if he wants. It's perfectly fine. But when he refuses to respond to constituents and the news media, small or large, that's not in your advantage. And he's just one example of so many politicians across the United States. Adam Schiff is a great example. A man who went on CNBC, on Rachel Maddow's program night after night after night and promised you that he had evidence that the Trump administration colluded with Russia. Promised you night after night. And guess what we found out now? Doesn't exist. There is no evidence. And the only evidence that we can find points to the Hillary Clinton campaign and the Democratic National Committee. Those are the people who colluded with Russia. All evidence points to them. Oh, but that's not important. No, don't worry about that. Forget about that. There's something else to be distracted on. We don't want to answer that question. How is that in your best interest? How does that help you? How does that make you feel more secure about the elections? I've had people who are complaining on Twitter who say to me, who are answering for these politicians. The politicians won't answer. Other people are saying, well, you just don't understand, Mike. Great. Maybe I don't. I didn't ask you. I asked the politician, the person who's running for elected office, the person who's going to vote in elections. And I have their viewers, some of them who are paid for. These are not just regular people. These are people who are paid to respond. They're answering. The politicians aren't. And these people are saying, well, no, you just don't understand. Okay, but you're not the person running for elected office. Why won't the candidate answer the question? Why won't they come onto this program and tell you what they really believe? Because they don't want you to know. That's what I believe. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't seem to be wrong. They're not disputing what I've said. Representative Delgado has never questioned. He hasn't said I've misunderstood any of the information. He's never said that I've got it wrong, that my facts are incomplete, that the evidence that I've provided is incorrect. He has never once challenged anything I said, which means, as far as I understand, he means he knows I'm right. That everything I'm saying is correct and true. He just doesn't want you to know it. And that's why he's happy to see that this channel gets struck and that our voice gets silenced and you get silenced for even hearing a different opinion, an opinion that he does not challenge. an opinion and conclusions that he does not dispute. He has never disputed a single thing that we have asked him. He has never disputed that the information, the nature of the question is incorrect or inappropriate. Never questioned it. I don't get questioned from Broome County Executive Jason Garnar or the Utica, Oneida County, the Oneida County County Executive, or any member of the Assembly. None of these politicians that I've brought up, I've mentioned them by name over and over again, none of them question anything I've said. None of them say that I have the wrong information, that I've misunderstood. They just don't want you to hear about it. They don't have any objection. They don't think that I'm wrong. They just don't think that you should hear or think about it. And these things affect our lives. Dow says, wonder if by presenting receipts to challenge his support on policies, how many times he'd pull the no true Scotsman tactic? Don't know. Good question. Look, folks, I truly look for your support in being able to speak. Not that I'm telling you that you have to, again, I've never said to you, you have to believe what we believe. We want you involved. We want you to believe what you believe, to come to the conclusions you come to. That's why we provide you the evidence, why we show you the receipts, as everyone says these days, of here's the evidence, here's what we're looking at, here's the information that you're not hearing in the United States, that the media is getting wrong, that they're misrepresenting to you. Here's what the politicians refuse to answer. We present that to you so that you can make a decision for yourself, whatever that decision may be. And that's why we get in trouble. That's why we get attacked. And we're not worried about it. It's not new. We get attacked all the time. The thing I'm concerned about is what happens when they get done attacking me, when they get done attacking this channel. Tomorrow, we're going to be interviewing Matt Braynard. Now, some people may know who he is. Some people don't know who he is. He's the executive director of Look Ahead America. You may like that organization. You may not. That's fine. But what do you really know? Have you actually heard anyone ask Matt Braynard questions about what he believes, what his organization does? Have you ever heard anyone ask those questions? Are you sure? Or have you heard someone tell you, this is how you're supposed to feel about Matt Braynard? This is how you're supposed to feel about Look Ahead America? There's a big difference. There's a big difference between asking a question and being told how to feel. That's why we're going to have Matt Braynard on, so that we can ask him questions and so we can know the facts, so that you can know the truth from his mouth and make your decisions based on that. Because what is he working on? Election integrity. I think that's an issue that we all can agree is important. Doesn't matter if you're left, right, center, doesn't matter. We all want our vote to count. We all want our vote to matter. Does it? Are you sure? Is your vote secure? Are you sure about that? Are you sure because someone told you that it's secure, or because they showed you how it was secure? There's a big difference between the two. And I would bet that most of the time, the average person has been told that, don't worry about it, it's secure. Forget about it. That's what the politicians generally have said. Don't worry about it, it's secure. We say so. They haven't shown you that it's secure, they're just telling you that it's secure. Just like they told you, well, Judge Jackson is qualified. They're not showing you how she's qualified. They're just telling you she's qualified. They're telling you she's the best choice, not showing you that she's the best choice. They're telling you that paying taxes on your ammunition is going to make you safe. They're not showing you how it makes you safe. You're not supposed to think about it. You're just supposed to accept that it's true. I think that's terrifying. I don't know how many people we reach this week. In fact, I never know how many people we reach every week until after the program. It may be less than we've gotten from YouTube with YouTube included in the past. That's not going to stop us. In a week, we will be uploading this video and other videos, the interview with Matt Brainerd on YouTube, so that you can see it. We're not going to stop. But one of these days, they're just going to remove us. And that's a problem for you, because you're going to lose another voice. And no one's going to be there to step up and take our place. I wish there were. I wish there were a line of people. There aren't. Yes, Dal says, they're telling us that the vote is as secure as they can make it for them. Not you, not for liberty, not for freedom, but for their political advantage. And that's what we're going to talk to Matt Brainerd about, how it can be made safe for everyone, whether you're a Democrat, a progressive, a conservative, a libertarian, a Republican. How do we make it safe for everyone? How can we be sure that everyone's vote counts? He has answers about that. How do we make sure our kids in school are being taught education and not propaganda? Because many people are concerned about critical race theory and its applications. And that we have seen, as we have shown you with SUNY Broom, that there are programs going on right now to put kids on a single track that says white people are racist and black people are victims, period. Which we disagree with. It's a hard road, folks. It's difficult times, and we're trying our very best. I hope that if you found any of this to be informative, interesting, please like, share, subscribe. Even on YouTube right now, while we're shut down, our goal is to hit 1,234 subscribers. That's our goal. It's not a big goal, doesn't change the world, but it does improve it. And we hope that you'll be able to support us with that. To just click that subscribe button on whatever format, Rumble, on BitChute, on Odyssey, on Minds, on YouTube, on Facebook. Pick one, pick several, doesn't matter. Because your support matters. It matters to freedom for all of us at the end of the day. Okay, folks, I'm going to let you go because we've covered a lot of ground. And I look forward to seeing your comments afterwards. Always, we look forward to hearing your voice, whether you agree or you disagree. But we want you to be well, be safe, and we look forward to seeing you every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as long as the internet overlords allow us to, and even further if we can push it, to be able to hear your voice, because you matter. Across the world, you are an individual, you are vital, you're important, and we love you. Thank you very much.